Who's electrocuting the chairman? Who's zapping the chairman in the street? The guy's hardly even in the door, and we're freaking him out already. No, he just got voted in yesterday, and then he's on the news last night, and the first thing he's talking about is how Rangers supporters come up to him in the street and electrocute him. There's electricity emanating off us and stuff like that. The guy's a health insurance executive. They're executing him in the streets in America. You don't want to freak him out. They use the electric chair. It's legal, and it was at one point anyway. The guy's just in the door. Could you just? I can't go back to being skint. I can't go back to being skint. Just going to freak him out and stuff like that. No, I know it's the castor tops. I know it's the castor tops. It's like having a mohair jumper and rubbing a balloon on it. There's that much static. And then, but we've got the Umbro ones now. I know it's still really castor, but they're probably better quality. Get the home one, the away one, anything. Just stop zapping the guy when you bump it. Earth yourself. Get yourself earth. I know the green and yellow cable's not the nicest cable. It's not the nicest rewire in the plug. Okay, it's a while since I've rewired a plug and all that. It's my emotional circuitry that's getting rewired just now, and I'm just at the point I'm ready to go all. I've had enough of the worrying folk. I know I've been talking for a couple of years about how see we're not winning trophies and all that. It makes us feel closer together. There's a better sense of community when you circle the wagons. It's not about winning domestic trophies. Look at what we're doing in Europe, and when times are hard, you just prove that you're a better support. I didn't mean any of that. That was all lies. I want honours of trophies, and that starts with honours of money. Make it rain, Andrew. No, you're all right, Mr. Kavanagh. Just make it rain. I don't care that that's the kind of green that we do like here. Just you pile it on me, mate. Pile it on us. I'm going. If we go down the tubes again, I'm going to get a season ticket for Man City. I can't take any more of this being skint stuff. I was just kidding on. That's me. I've got to the end of my tether. I've managed to drag myself through the last 13 years of this, and it's just come to an end. And you're going out zapping the guy in the street. Is that what Parag Marath was talking about with the closing the loop? Is he talking about a circuit board or something like that? We're closing the circuit, but no, it was plumbing. He was talking about plumbing as well, wasn't he, Marath? I don't know what's happening. The 75 million, was it 75 million they invested? That's the price I saw kicking about somewhere. I don't know if that's official or no. I don't know if it's even been revealed as such. We're just guessing at how much it took them to. Never mind this 20 million that's getting talked about for what they're going to put into the team or bits and bobs of the stadium and all that. It's just the 75 million. That's the real deal to buy the club. But is that not how much? It was 70 or 75 million was getting chucked about as a figure in 2012 when what it would take to stop Rangers getting into liquidation was 70, 75, and there was nobody about then. There was nobody then. That's why I'm like, these guys aren't the heroes. Not why we gave them my initial reaction to the takeover being announced and becoming like semi-official, everybody admitting to it. No, a few weeks ago, that Friday afternoon, I was pretty bitter. I was bitter because the ownership thing has really been a bit of a problem for us since 2011, 2012ish, and the fact that everybody being so negative and slagging the genuine Rangers supporters we had on the board over the last few years who were just holding us together, giving us a team to actually watch and get us to European finals and into the Champions League and stuff like that. Winning 55, winning all the major trophies, just making sure Rangers just kept limping along, but we're still there, just ready for somebody to come in and they were getting no credit. They're getting slag rotten, and these strangers come in to buy us. I think a couple of weeks ago when it first became, it was always an open secret for months, but when it was confirmed by all involved that they were the 49ers Enterprises and Andrew Kavanagh were wanting to take over, I was a bit like the guy, was it Katsushiro? Is it the young fella, the young samurai in Seven Samurai, wants to actually beat. Once they fight off the bandits and they eventually beat the bandits in a big battle in the rain, and he's like greeting because there's no more bandits to fight. It was just too much. It was too much because it's been fight. Just hold it together. We're all right. Everyone's going to be fine. It's better to support Rangers than anybody else. But if this falls through, I'm getting a season ticket for Man City. That's it. I'm not going to be a supporter of a skint club ever again. I'm just moving down there. I know how to get there. I got there once on the 14th of May 2008. I'll get myself back down there again because they all seem to leave well before the end anyway. Man City, they're still struggling to fill that place. I'll be going down there if this falls through. So stop, please stop electrocuting the new chairman. There's been a few times in the journey back that I've been on here or various podcasts or writing articles for wee magazines and things like that, whatever. Just this is it. Oh, we're fine. We're back. Did I say we're back? I don't know. Probably at the time. Probably. I think 55. I definitely felt as if we're back. But it's not been false dawns. It's been stuff that absolutely had to happen. But all it was reminding us, or reminding the rest of Scottish football, we're not going away. We're still there, showing us enough as a support that we will be back properly. We're not going to be properly back, I don't think, until we are retaining league titles. Now, obviously, that's going to take 2 years at least before we can say that has happened. But I just feel as if this is a major step, and as I say, it's my emotional circuitry that's been rewired with yesterday's confirmation that these fellas in the interviews. It's strange. I wasn't ready to accept it a couple of weeks ago when it was. I wasn't ready to accept it in a celebratory mode, and it's still no about celebration. I'm keeping all my celebrating energy for when we actually win stuff on the park and have stuff to celebrate. And we have had plenty to celebrate, I say, particularly in European terms, over the last 10, 12, 13 years. But there's been all these little moments, even people, the journey back, I think people thought that started at the start of 2012, 2013, when we started off in the bottom tier of Scottish football, Scottish League football. And it ended when we got back into the top flight. Well, we now know that's not true. And it was never true even then, because I remember being in Robert Owen's New Lanark. The first time I'd ever been, for some reason, we never did a school trip there. We never did a school trip, my school, going to New Lanark. Went everywhere else, but we never got to New Lanark. And I was there as an adult, in my 40s in 2012, because it was a Monday bank holiday, wasn't it? And I was there with the missus, and I was walking about the mill, the site of the old, it's a hotel now, and that kind of thing, and the kind of model village idea, and it saw Robert Owen, a Welsh utopian who moved to America as well. Now, the Americans are coming back here to put them on. Anyway, I was there, and I was in the cafe, and I was having an Empire biscuit. Literally, I love a good Empire biscuit. If I get dragged into a cafe, I will have an Empire biscuit. And I was fine into that, and then the phone went, or whatever, and the texts, and that was when it was announced that we were going into administration. And even in the first game, we had, after administration, at home to Kilmarnock, we get beat 1-0. We beat 1-0 at home to Kilmarnock the first game, and it felt appropriate to lose the game. But it was one of those moments, the stadium, Ibrox, it was a kind of harsh sunny look you get in the winter, a low winter sun. But there is, I've probably gone about this before, it's a fascination of mine. You get games where there is such an atmosphere, I think you can actually see it. There's such an intense atmosphere amongst the supporters. And it's not just Rangers, I noticed this as well. The game Dortmund lost, or did they draw at Borussia Dortmund? They had a chance, I think it was the season before by Leverkusen. Sorry, it was 24, Leverkusen won the 25, but so it was maybe 2022, 2023 perhaps. And Dortmund, or maybe the season before that, Dortmund took it right down to the wire. I think they were favourites to win the league, and it went to the last day of the season, and they had like the 85,000 or something like that crammed into the Westfalen. And it was a kind of sunny day as well, maybe an early kick-off or something, but there's almost a kind of haze that comes out in this stadium. That's got like 75, 80,000 in it every home game. The Westfalen, Ibrox is usually between 45 and 50,000 every home game as well. But there is something that's visible in the air, and it always looks like people are doubling up on seats or standing, safe standing areas or whatever. It always looks really intense. There's a particularly packed look about the place, even in these days where big stadiums are all seater for the most part. And it was like that day against Kilmarnock. It was like, right, we're here. We're not going to desert you. Times are hard. We're going into administration, 10-point deduction, but we're here. And you think that's going to run out. You think that's just a kind of show of defiance, perhaps, at the time. And you wonder, is this going to last though? Is everybody going to start, slowly walking away? But we don't do that at Rangers, said Super Ali. And I think in March of 2012, the following month, because of the 10-point deduction and because we weren't doing so well football-wise, there was a situation where Celtic came to Ibrox. And Celtic have won the league at Ibrox before in 1967. They're kind of annus mirabilis, but they drew that day. We've won the league at Parkhead, beating them 3-0. We won the treble that season as well back in 98, 99, but that would just have been too much. I don't believe in fair or unfair when it comes to football. You win or you don't, That's what sport's all about. But that day I thought, no, we don't deserve this, man. And I was really worried about that. From the moment we lost that game at home to Hearts, I think it was the previous week, there was a real kind of toxic, horrible feeling in the stands after that game. And it was all about the fact we're opening up the possibility of Celtic clinching the title at Ibrox. And I'll never forget where I parked my car that day. I walked onto Copeland Road, at the top of the Copeland Road, and walking right down past the underground, and the atmosphere was the most defying atmosphere I've ever experienced. And that was maybe the start of the sea change of the Rangers support. Something we'd taken on board. We're like, we're proper knee jerkers. It's like, we're here for the glory, we're here to win stuff, and it's not very often that Rangers supporters have a chance to almost be the underdog, almost have to defy the odds. It's about not getting beat rather than winning, except maybe in Europe when you're playing some of the proper giants in Europe. But that day it was just, it's not going to happen. I've never experienced an atmosphere like it. I've never experienced an atmosphere like it. That was all day. That was a flag shoved into the ground. That was the pin in the wall, whatever you want to call it. It was just, we'll go no further. But there's only so much we're going to take, and we went 3-0 up. Celtic come back to 3-2, but they had to win the game to win the league, and that was a moment we thought, there's a spirit here that maybe is going to last through whatever problems and whatever punishments we get for these financial problems we've got just now. And along the way, I remember even as early as having Motherwell in the League Cup at Ibrox. It was live in the BBC. And I was in the Broom Road stand that night. I was doing a thing of just buying a ticket for every different part of the ground. That first season in the lower leagues, so we're basically a fourth division club, and Motherwell suddenly were like, it was like welcoming Bayern Munich or Monaco or something like that. It was like a European atmosphere because we were going to have no European football for a few years. We're playing a top flight club and we beat them. We put Motherwell. I think they were actually top of the top flight at that point in time. Motherwell was quite early in the season. They were one of the clubs to really benefit from us not being in the top flight, qualifying for Europe, etc. But we beat them quite handily, and it was great. It was it was like, we're going to be able, we'll be able to get back to the top if this is us in the bottom flight. We're still Rangers in so many ways, and so many lows, obviously, so many lows, particularly in the Challenge Cup. It seemed to be very symbolic. But even the Celtic semi-final 2016, the Scottish Cup, the Old Firm Scottish Cup semi-final, we became, kind of strange glory of being the only lower league side to win an Old Firm match. That 2016, that 2 each game that went to penalties, we were absolutely brilliant that day. We played some fantastic football, and it was a humiliation for Celtic, and it was a sign that we will be back. We don't worry about it. But Celtic knew that, and they moved to ensure that we wouldn't be back too soon. We were back in the top flight already at that point, but 55, of course, is the main one. Steven Gerrard took him 3 years to get there, but when we got there, my God, it was almost worth the wait. Winning the league unbeaten. 25 points clear, just playing some sublime football, but the fans weren't in the stadium. That was the thing. That's the thing we've still got to do as well, I think, before we feel as if we're properly back, have everybody in the stadium. But we did that, and then we get to a European final the following season. The season after that, we get into we get back into the Champions League group stages. That's probably the most nervous I've ever been. Strangely, after everything we'd been through at that point in time, I just felt as if we need to do this. We've got another shot at getting into the Champions League here, going over to Eindhoven, 2 each for the first leg, and they scalped us. It was 2 each for the first leg, same scenario, same stage, same opponent. The following year in Eindhoven, PSV beat us 5-1 under Michael Beale, but under Gio, we went over there, we won 1-0. Cholak, and it was great. That was a massive relief, and again, it's like, we're back in the Champions League, but then you take a total scalping in the Champions League, because it's always kind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, as it should be when your entire infrastructure has been ripped out of you, as it was in 2012, and then winning the Scottish Cup, and then winning the League Cup, and beating Real Betis in Spain, our first ever win against Spanish opposition, doing things that even we hadn't managed to accomplish before all the financial troubles of 2012. All these moments we thought we're going to be fine, we're going to get there, but so many more moments where it felt as if, are we really? Are we ever going to get back to properly being on the level that we used to be, retaining league titles and whatever? I thought it was going to take us until the early 2030s if there wasn't a massive intervention by a third party financially, and I'm so glad it's Americans rather than Saudi Arabians or Qataris or Emiratis or whatever. This just feels like a moment. This feels like we've been reassuring ourselves that everything will be fine. For the last 13 years, we'll have these moments of just it's like a little base camp halfway up to Everest, but I feel as if we're now at the top, and it's just about making sure we get back down safely, and that entails winning lots of trophies. Retain league titles. I think retaining the league title is the moment that has been voted, because we've pretty much done everything else. We've nearly won a European trophy. We're a penalty shootout away from winning a European trophy, and there still was no sense of anybody taking it easy on the board or whatever, or even the players, certainly not in James Tavernier, the miraculous captain that season, almost single-handedly getting us to the final. Still hated by half the support. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. So there's been an effective popular vote taking place over the last decade or so that just says when we win the league and then retain the thing, I think we'll feel as if then Rangers are properly back, and then it's just all about taking it forward and making sure we do it again. But for me, I feel as if the emotional, the worry, the real problem was always just having the infrastructure, having the wherewithal, having the proper heft behind the scenes. And this feels like that's happened again. It has happened again. I had my rant and my rave, I say, a few weeks ago about how this can come back to haunt us in 5 years or 10 years' time, depending on how this consortium wants to withdraw from Rangers, what they leave behind, what the legacy is. Lots of talk of stadium expansion, etc. I think we really need that. We need something that's going to be a sustainable legacy. But they're talking about that just now as well. They're making all the right noises, very professional. Marat and Kavanagh and everyone there appointing as well, everything they're getting into place underneath them just seems to be speaking of the same as so many other clubs in Britain have just now, so many other clubs across Europe, across South America. You have Tony Bloom with Brighton and Union St Gilloise and stepping into Hearts and all that as well. We're not alone in Scotland when it comes to this stuff, and we're certainly not alone when it comes to Britain. Our vice chairman is the chairman of Leeds United, as we all well know, deeply involved with the San Francisco 49ers, but it's a very common situation just now. We're going to talk about that a bit later in another one of my overextended podcasts, which will be the last official Fat Egg podcast of 2024-2025. Before I go away for a wee holiday, and I'll be back to do a post-match reaction pod after the Bruges games. And it never really stops, just a kind of Sunday service. When I was voting against Indie Ref, when I was voting no in 2014, there was a host of reasons to vote to stay in the UK, as far as I was concerned, but being a totally mad, mental character of what am I like, by the way, I play a pie and a pint and a bottle of Iron Brew. I would do a wee kind of vaudeville style bit when I was talking to folk about it, because the idea for me was that everybody's only independent up to a point, even as individuals, even as human beings. We need somebody to, feed us and clothe us and bathe us when we're kids, when we're first born, and, when we're geriatric, we need somebody to look at our, basically the weight and the size that I am just now. You need somebody to clothe you and feed you and bathe you and stuff like that. You die, you need somebody to put you in the ground and give you a bit of respect. What I'm trying to say is no country, like no human, is truly independent up to a certain point, and I felt as if we're independent enough. That was not really the point, but I would do this thing about how we'd find out about it, economically. You couldn't cut yourself off of England, send England into the North Sea or whatever like that. We're still going to be attached to England. What was the point of cutting? We're slagging folk for voting for Brexit, and then you went to cut off an even nearer economic trading partner. But I would say, well, we'd soon have to be caddying for Americans. We'd all have to learn how to be golf caddies, and we'd have to wear a kilt and tam o' shanter, and really camp it up. Do the whole proper Scottish accent as far as American, the stereotypical cinema Scot. Hey, okay, so aye, sir, aye. I think you'll be needing a 4-iron for that. I'm not a golfer. That's your putter. You're needing a putter for that. If Jings Crivens, and talking about how you're going home that night to have a few drams and read tam o' shanter in your cranach or whatever. You just got to do all that kind of stuff. My grandpa, he fought alongside William Wallace. But all the irony now. My bid to see our quintessential British club back to the glory days. I can no longer suffer another day without those glory days. I'll be doing exactly that for Kavanagh if I bump into him. No, in the Links course, but in Edmondson Drive. He wants us to be buzzing with electricity to encourage his investment. Well, he's fucking got it. Andrew, okay, come on, Andrew, okay. 56, let's go, Jings Criven, let's scalp these Tims. Oh, by the way, I'm absolutely loving it, Hootsmon. I'll be doing all that. I'll be kowtowing as much as possibly can if I meet Andrew Kavanagh or Parag Marath. That'll teach me to slag off Scotland, the folk that were voting to leave the UK. When 2 years before that, the NDRF thing in 2014 was explaining why I'd trust Charles Green as far as I could throw him. Chief among my wee kind of set piece bits, because I'm a character there, was his instant and flagrant overuse of the first person plural pronoun. No, we this and us that. You've been here 2 minutes. I was saying in your every fly by night kind of bellend in a suit who joined our board in some equally nakedly opportunistic manner. We talk about Super Ali and the Old Firm. I love it. I love those old firms. And Ibrox Stadium, not the Castle. It's the Castle. Gets sponsored by White Castle. Would that come across as a bit racist? I don't know. But that's something to look into. But it was like really painfully disingenuous kind of bullet points that Charles Green then all his little bullet points of fake loyalty, fake kind of fandom that they would all hit straight away when they were getting interviewed on Sky and what have you, and it was awful to watch. That's why I was dotting about different parts of the stadium in the first part of 2012-2013 season. I wasn't given hundreds of pounds for a season ticket to any of these guys. Never missed a game, as I say, but I wasn't forking out because they were obviously con men. But I'd mimic these guys, I'd take the piss out of them by generally, giving it the kind of, I really loved it when Super Alan hit that home run in the Stanley Cup so we could lift the Vince Lombardi at Parkhead FC's home field. I know there was a Parkhead FC that won the Junior Cup, but now we've got a vice chairman who has actually been a major player at the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers approve his message. They retweet Parag Marath, they retweet Andrew Kavanagh. The 49ers are officially on board with what's happening at Rangers. After all, it was Craig White. I think he was one stepping up to the plate and out of left field. He started with all the baseball stuff. And then it was all these guys would come in, and it was all very American sports. But now we've actually got to. I'm totally. Call us whatever you want, Parag. Just call us whatever you want. Give us a loot. I'm a bad. But call me all dangly Boz Anderson if you want, as if you've known me your whole life. Just call me. You can call me Alexis on a Saturday night, because Saturday night is cocktail dress night on www.you'renotreadyformyjelly onlyfans.com. But just whatever you want to call us, Parag, I am totally on board, mate. You're my busy mate. Let's play that game, because you guys have definitely we've seen enough. Is there a better educated support now when it comes to shysters and fly-by-nights of a business nature than the Rangers support? I know we'd all like to have the joke about the Celtic support, that kind of Celtic supporter who's madly into our business, and it seems to be a lot of them. Very high up in the hierarchy of Celtic fandom, guys on Sky and what have you. They seem to be very interested in our business all the time, and we have that joke about there, but they're no educated. They're just, schooled in finding possible flaws and doing that painful kind of, I am laughing at you because I think it's a fake over, it's not going to happen. No, we're properly educated in what these guys are like, and this is as good as you're going to get, I think. In world football, this is the standard now. This is the kind of blue ribbon. The blue ribbon of takeover consortiums. I don't care. I don't care that he can't count. I don't care that Andrew Kavanagh said that. Was that thing he was saying yesterday? But all three. Basically, all three. There's three things you can get in football. There's the league and the cups in Europe, and some clubs would be really happy to have one of them. But at Rangers, you've entered all three. You're going for all three, and we're all going. It's four. There's two cups in the league, and then Europe. And maybe if we get into Club World Championship, the next one, that's like 5 tournaments we've gone for. The Super Cup isn't a competition. I'm not having it. I want Rangers to win the Super Cup. We invented the thing. I do want us to win that one day, obviously, but it's a ceremonial. It's the Community Shield of, and I don't want to go Pep Guardiola, but the opposite of Pep. Pep was trying to count the Community Shield. Anyway, the whole point is Andrew, he thinks the cups, the League Cup and the Scottish Cup is one competition. Hey, we're going to win the cups this season. You're like, that's great, 2 competitions. He's got what? So I don't know, because the singular plural thing, Marat was talking about, it was Russell Martin, great guy, because he's a former Ranger man. I don't care. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to just a former Ranger. If you're a Rangers man, well, you can't be a former Ranger. You're a Rangers man, and that's that. You're a Rangers man for life. That's why you're a Rangers man. Or you're a former Ranger. But maybe it was a kind of thing. He's a former Ranger man. Maybe just going pure West Coast. San Francisco, he's been there for a while, getting a bit over familiar with the Rangers TV folk. But or maybe it was we're going pure woke now, aren't we? Head coach instead of manager. That's pure woke. Apparently he's a vegan as well. How woke do you want to get? And he's a Ranger man as opposed to a Ranger woman. I mean, Jo Potter, all the best to her if she's moving on to Crystal Palace as we think. But guys who they're both big football fans. They're not saying soccer, they're saying football. That's good. But if they're from the States, that is all. It's women's. The women's game is much stronger than the men's games in so many ways. In the men's game in so many ways, certainly at international level, it's a massive thing over there. The kind of middle class, grassroots women's soccer. So maybe he was just specifying it's a Ranger man as opposed to a Ranger woman. I don't know what's going on there, but he can do or say whatever he wants. This, I just feel as if it's done. It's over. It's the end of the daily worry. God, we've actually got a massive infrastructural worry for 5 or 10 years down the line. When these guys try to withdraw, but I'm on holiday this week. I'm away. I'm off ski. I'm leaving on a jet plane at the end of this week. I'll be back in time for the Bruges friendly, but I feel as if this has just trucky our it's our day has come, and it's 7 years ahead of the plan. I thought it was going to be the 2030s for us just to do it on our own steam, with more Philip Clements and more Michael Beales and stuff like that. But we would get there eventually because we're finishing second in most stuff that we weren't winning in Scotland, and we're doing so well in Europe. And Celtic are known for not spending any more than they really have to, so they would slip up again and we'd get in there, eventually overhaul them. But right now I don't care about what Marat's saying, how they're coming across at all, because these guys have allowed us to skip that, to skip the extra 7 years or so. Kavanagh and Marat, I think, they're up front yesterday about the fact that they'll be basically Lawrence Marlborough-ing it. If you saw them, they're sitting there doing that interview on Rangers TV where they're both sitting on, it was like thrones, separate thrones. Kavanagh's got one hand on each leg and Marath's got the crossed hands thing. Is it a Masonic thing? I'm the one the Masons use. Get it. My brothers, let me know, am I out the loop again? It's a closed circuit loop, a closed loop, whatever it is, but I don't know if it's some sort of Masonic thing that's going on there, but they're sitting there and it looked like they were in thrones, the two of them, and I'm perfectly happy with that. But it's like Lawrence Marlborough, he was in, was it Nevada? He was in, John Lawrence, the Lawrence Group, like he died, did he die in 1977? And I think Lawrence Marlborough had become a kind of vice chairman or something in the Lawrence Group, not the actual business, in about 73. Something happened in 77, because I've read this before, and it was the same year that I went to my first Rangers game, and I was only 7 years old at the time. And that was the start of Lawrence Marlborough's involvement. It was John Lawrence, he dies, so he passes all the shares in his company, and obviously in Rangers, onto young Lawrence Marlborough. And I think it was about 79 that Lawrence Marlborough moved onto the board at Rangers, and then bang, 1985 he appears, and it's David Holmes he's got under his arm to set free among Scottish football. David Holmes just gets out there and just chews it all up. But it took a couple of years, or it took a year anyway, before he properly announced himself by sacking Jock Wallace, David Holmes, and getting in Graham Souness. But it was about 1985 that he really went for it, Lawrence Marlborough, and I feel as if there's a double. It's like football's expanded. You know what you have to do in football these days to at a club the size of Rangers. Well, it's going to involve more people, but we've got the way they were talking about Kavanagh and Marath, who basically are both Lawrence Marlborough. One's putting the actual money in with a proper go-ahead attitude. They've got Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell, their chief executive and sporting director, totally fronting everything as much, if not more, than Russell Martin on a day-to-day basis. And we were talking about that yesterday. They're basically going to be kind of in absentia. The silent partner, I think it was, that Lawrence Marlborough get called back in the day, and they'll be doing the same. They've already said more. They've had more of a media presence already, I think, than Lawrence Marlborough ever had when he kind of came to the fore in 1985. But if it's just a couple of years, the same as it was back then, that would be fine by me, because that's what it feels like just now. This talk that Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell, according to Parag Marath, think about things, and I'm quoting here, think about things the way Kavanagh and Marath like to think about things. They're looking at football decision making from an empirical, data-based perspective. That's Billy Bean. That's the Oakland days. That's the Oakland Athletics straight away there. That's Moneyball straight away. So it's not going to be spectacular. It's not going to be, and it hasn't been at Leeds United. It hasn't been, and it's worked for them. Lots of underwhelming decisions when it comes to personnel, but with fantastic results. You maybe have to take a wee year out, just stabilising. They didn't, and it was our manager, our current head coach, Russell Martin, that was responsible for keeping Leeds United in the Championship for that extra season. But that's Russell Martin as a man that they've got in. So I think it's going to be, and we were completely underwhelmed with Russell Martin as an appointment. That's fine. That's par for the course with how these guys operate. And obviously the experience that Stewart has all the years at Manchester United. Look at the state of Man United, I know, but look at the size of Man United. Look at the scope. Look at the contacts he's obviously built up. Thelwell at Wolves, at Everton. Now, they're not top end of the table, of course, in the English top flight, but they're in the English top flight, and they're operating in there, and it's major. It's absolutely major compared to everything in Scotland, and I'm impressed so far by all of them. I think that the Moneyball thing is spot on for Rangers, because it's about, as I've said before, exploit in Scotland. We're not needing to do anything. As Rangers, the size of us, the size of our support, the size of our stadium, it's not so much about trying to gain an advantage as exploiting the advantage we already have before the season even kicks off. The size of our support, it's like natural resources, if you like. The size of our support. There's only one club who should be above, and they have been. Celtic have been the only club above us in the league for, 6 straight years now? 7? I think 6. This is us going to the 10th season back in the top flight, and we finished second the first 2 seasons back in the top flight. So it's only them what are above us, and it's just about making sure that even if we're not winning the league, pick up a Scottish Cup, pick up a League Cup every season until we are winning the league again, and keep doing what we're doing in Europe. So it's Moneyball, a proper Moneyball approach. I know Hearts are looking quite ominously impressive the way they're setting up their particular Moneyball influence, but that should be enough for Rangers just to achieve, at least be winning every second league title. If you've got that kind of Moneyball approach to things. I'm very excited, folks. Since Kavanagh and Marath are up front today about the fact they'll be Lawrence Marlborough. You won't hear from them very often. They'll be kind of in absentia, but no matter how much Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart want to take on their burden, the burden of the consortium headmen, Marath and Kavanagh, and no matter how much Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell want to remove the burden of our head coach. This is still Rangers. We're still a football club. And the man who fronts this new era, actually and emotionally and symbolically, is going to be Russell Martin. It's the head coach, and if a change is as good as a rest, let's all kick back with whatever it is a vegan kicks back with, and just chill. I'm actually exhausted. Do you know what I mean? It's that feeling you get when something you've been waiting for years suddenly happens. I am going to do some celebrating in a few days' time, but that's just I'm just going on my holidays and what have you. I just feel as if boom, after a long hard season as well. Wham! It's relief. How you doing? Anyway, this is your fat ache. If you don't return my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle football, I have a particular set of skills, and I will track you down, and I will find you, and I will make you buy me another Teenage Mutant Ninja football and leave it outside my room in Wonder Westworld in Ayr. Preview pod coming to you in association with Jersnet. Check out Jersnet during the season, every Friday 9 p.m, every Sunday at 9:30 p.m. live on YouTube. And there's a few cracking videos up there just now on Jersnet as well for you to a look over. And I'm sponsored by that, and I'm also sponsored by speaking clearly, by enunciating to your audience, by not slurring your words. I must apologise. Like I say, it's coming to the end of the season. I lost a subscriber the other day, and then I've had somebody else today telling me that they've had enough. They're not going to be watching the pod anymore. The politics was getting me. I was talking about Donald Trump and all that and getting ripped into him. For me, it's no politics. That's like saying somebody in 1933 Germany who was, it was given it. Either they're coming into our house and they're checking that I'm Jewish, and they're sending me to a camp, and my whole family, I think they've murdered them all. And it's like, oh, enough with the news nights. And get on to question time, mate. That's just, politics. Maybe Keir Starmer, refusing to condemn Donald Trump's international actions or whatever, and Keir Starmer certainly not condemning what Israel's doing in Gaza. That's maybe politics if you're concerned, but if you know, I don't think it's no politics I'm bothered with. It's what I see is just a descent towards fascism in the States, and we faced up to it ourselves with Boris Johnson, and it's all to do with this stuff. It's all to do with social media. It's all to do with it's the Russians. It's all the Russians. That's just stuff I like to talk about because it's no strictly speaking a Rangers podcast, although mostly I do talk about Rangers. But I split it into wee chapters and that, so you can jump ahead if you don't like what I'm saying. You can totally respect anybody who doesn't want to listen to me, quite right, but I am going to go on about that kind of stuff because it's kind of unignorable, and I like to just throw in various things that are concerning me because I think it's about just letting you know what other Rangers fans are thinking, or if you're not a Rangers supporter yourself, letting you know what the average bear is thinking about. Maybe it's what I'm trying to say is I'm just going to do politics, even though I've just said it was the actual politics I'm doing, but I'm just going to just give it to the man, I'm going to speak truth to power, I'm not going to and maybe it's my singing. I do little songs that I absolutely trash when I try to sing them to give it a bit of flavour, but I'm just arty, I'm just different, so that's just, you just got to deal it, you know what I mean? Or maybe it's the fact that I talk to I feel the stuffed animals, you call them. Davey and Kenny, you call them stuffed animals. That's my pals you're talking about. I know we fall out with each other, from time to time, but what good pals don't? No, that's like Michael Bentine's potty time. Somebody called that's out of order. That's my mates that I'm talking about there. It's arty. It's probably a cult. I'm a bit of a cult pod, or it's the fact that your pods are 92 minutes long. The film eventually gets out of sync with your voice, and you talk pure shite. Oh, right, okay, that's different. I'm also hearing, what I'm hearing is I'm too fat, aren't I? Lou, wee Simpsons reference there. But one thing I'm definitely doing is the season goes on, the football season goes on, more and more pods without going away on a holiday and stuff like that. It's the reverse of the five-a-sides. You ever do that thing, especially when you're older? I haven't played fives for, about 16 years now. I stopped when I was 40 because I'm an awful footballer my entire life, but I did love playing. And I had this really unfortunate thing of just being angry a lot, and not competitive enough to go out and actually go out running, at 6 o'clock in the morning and doing press ups and stuff like that all the time, just getting mad fit so I could be a good footballer. But I would do that thing if anybody started taking the piss at the fives or whatever, I would want to, get stuck it. And it was just getting to the point where I was an embarrassment. I was going to end up injuring myself or some poor wee 14-year-old who was going to go up and leather me. So I just thought that's I stopped then. But I still remember that thing of you would go along, you hadn't been for a while, just absolutely awful, terrible, feels awful. Absolutely knackered, but that never stopped really. For me, that never stopped. But somebody else would tell you'd notice you'd scored a few more goals than usual, or you got a few more tackles and things like that. And I just remember one night somebody actually saying to me, "I see a difference in you since you started," And it was kind of like you're still pish, but you're actually no as pish. Really nowhere near as pish as you were when you first started back at the start of the season or whatever, because it's like you build up your kind of match fitness, so to speak. I think with the podding, it's working in reverse. You've got that enthusiasm at the start of the season, and you're just chat. And I know last season I did like 90 odd pods for Jersnet last season, most of them me and my Todd. And I remember doing the Hamburg friendly. And I think it's a 10-minute post-match reaction pod. And I'm going to try the same after the Bruges game. By the end of the season, it's like an hour long. And all the pods I'll be doing this season, my own wee pod here, are like getting up to an hour and a half. I had a 2-hour one as well. So I think it's like a reverse thing. As far as I'm concerned, I'm talking about the same amount of stuff. I've got the same amount of interest, but just slowing down and grinding to a halt. The actual you don't get match fitter, you just get match slower as the podding goes on. So I'm sorry, and I've noticed that my speech gets really slurred. I've had to break the pods into chapters. I'm just talking to myself here. My God, Alec, I've got so much to say about Russell Martin as well. Sorry, but I'm break the pods up into little chapters, especially when they go on too long, so you can just navigate through them. That thing of being able to jump onto whatever subject you would rather hear me talking crap about. But in doing that means I've got to listen to myself. I've got to listen back to myself, which I used to do all the time when I was first doing pods. Oh my God, that sounds terrible. And that bit was all right. But no, I just chuck it out there. Just I know you guys are not fussy, obviously. So, but I listen back to it when I'm chopping it up into chapters. And some of this, I've just done it the other now. Some of the stuff, I don't actually complete the sentence. I don't complete the phrase. I don't complete the clause. And other times I'm slurring my words. I don't think I've got a speech impediment. I think it's more a case of I get so enthusiastic about what I'm trying to say. I need to get so much information in there and make it as quick as possible so I'm not taking up any more of your time, that it ends up kind of slurring together. So I've noticed that in a few of the pods recently, so apologies for that. I'll go for articulation lessons. I'll go to a Swiss finishing school or something like that during the course of the summer to try and sort that out. But I think it's just the fatness, the tiredness, and just turning into a big mumbly blob. So that's how we'll end this season of podcasting. But as I say, I think the man who embodies what's going on with Rangers just now, and it's a massive thing. The thing that's sending me away, not just that kind of holiday buzz that you get because you're going away on holidays, but just a feeling of the hard work at Rangers is over. It's all going to be on the park. Who are we signing? What are the tactics like? Who's best wide left and stuff like that. That's God, bring that back. That's going to be so good, as opposed to having to defend every single aspect of the club anytime we're less than perfect, because I think we've all now got faith. You gotta have faith, the faith. We're Rangers supporters, faithful through. I think we all now we recognise a proper ownership model and a proper setup. And I think it's all getting beyond me in the best possible way. I'm a massively old man, as well as being massively overweight. But I know the stuff I'm not really recognising, and I'm getting that beautiful thing of feeling that my own instincts about football are getting, they're antediluvian, atavistic at best, but they're kind of antediluvian, and that's what it needs. I can't ignore the fact that that's what it needs. I grew up in a world where attacking football, having an ethos of attacking football, and expansive football, and we'll score more than you do, and that kind of thing, was stupid, was backwards, and was for fannies. Basically, it was for dicks. Sorry, let's make it less sexist. It was just stupid, and invariably it always lost and attracted that kind of cultish following, which I've always hated. Over romanticising, and that always leads to bad things, So I was never a big fan of it, and I think that's why a lot of us have an instant aversion to Russell Martin and the kind of football he preaches. The very fact that he does preach it, you need to be preaching it somehow. For some reason, it needs to. The minute you say, "I want my team to have, most of the ball, dominate possession," which is exactly what we're all wanting last season, but somehow a manager saying that, especially if he's calling himself a head coach, guys my age, your Rangers dads or Rangers grandpas in my case, their instincts are, oh god, that sounds kind of preachy, that sounds a bit woke or whatever. No. This is what's got to happen. You can't ignore the signs. I think that the Spanish national team and what they've done in football of late kind of proves that no, that's maybe not the case anymore, and it's good. Russell Martin, I have slagged Rangers supporters. I say, I take a slagging as well. It's all good fun. It's all meant with love. But I've done that whole thing where I was enjoying the fact that everybody who was telling me to get on board with the new ownership, even though it was a bunch of strangers we didn't know anything about, were taking complete control of the club. They were then up in arms, a week later when it was Russell Martin was announced as the new head coach. Him, you're joking? Well, that's shite. And somebody actually saying, I'm not renewing my season tickets. Like, what? I think that's just a one-off. It's probably a Celtic fan impersonating a Rangers supporter, like social media stuff. But I was enjoying that. I was loving it. But it was, I think that instantly, in a stupid way, it made me straight away be on board with Russell Martin in an equally hypocritical way. Because a week before that I'd said he was the last of all the options being quoted for the Rangers manager's job, for the Rangers head coach's job. Russell Martin was the guy. I was just like, no, that's stupid. It's because we think I think my quote was, we've looked at Vincent Kompany and seen, oh, he's failed. He got Burnley promoted, then he got them relegated from the English top flight, and then he walks into the Bayern Munich job and wins the Bundesliga. So we think a guy who gets a championship side promoted to the English Premier League and then gets them relegated is ideal as a total winner. And now I'm saying that without sarcasm. Well, that's actually what Vincent Kompany did when you think about it. I mean, it's all about the guy who fits what club best. I know I am being a total hypocrite as well. But it's not just that, it's all these kind of in-house videos. I mean, Rangers TV, what the hell they did with Russell Martin, I mean, they must have been like in his house when he left to come to meet the media the Monday that he actually signed for the club, because they say they're in his car, filming him in the car. Then they're filming him in the track side as he's parking his 4x4 in front of the West Enclosure and high-fiving all the guys that have arranged his wages and stuff like that, his contract. And then he's up the tunnel, they're following up the tunnel. Obviously, you've got the half-hour press conference. He's actually meeting the media. Then he's in the blue room, the manager's office. He's signing the contract. Next thing, they've got him holding never mind holding the scarf in the tunnel. The pitch, they've got him holding the new white, the away kit. Not just like, can you sell the new home kit for us, Russell? Can you just hold up the kit because you're the manager, you don't get to wear the kit. But Rangers fans like to see the kit. No, it was the away kit had just been released. Quite a smart kit, actually. The white I quite like. I don't like the home kit, but I'm liking the away kit there, the white, that's quite nice, but I know it's a kind of reprise of one we've had in the past, and I know it's a bit like the England tops. I don't like the Union Jack. Anyway, let's not start doing that road again. But it's smart. But he's the head coach. You know Walter Smith, mate. You're the head coach, right? You have to work it, baby. You start advertising the club. They were hitting me. Was it a 3-minute quick fire questions? This was all seemed to be in the space of the first hour. He'd been in the building. He'd been in Ibrox. So. They certainly are working on when it came to the amount of videos that they were producing. This is where he did the whole thing about, was it the first time he came to Scotland? That was to watch his brother playing, one of his older brothers playing football, and he had a Teenage Mutant Ninja football. I'm assuming he was quite young at the time, and it gets stolen. And I'm thinking, Celtic fans are watching this, you're going to just pick up on this, and they'll all be buying Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Boys and putting them onto the park at Ibrox for the first Old Firm game of the season. But it was good stuff. It was taking us into this world of Russell Martin, who I'd just been kind of noticing from the outside. Russell Martin, oh God, that's that guy that gifted the ball to Callum McGregor that time he got beat 4-0. You know, I was there when he scored these. The only time I took my nephew, who's a Hibs supporter, but I love him with all my heart, you know. I don't mean that sarcastically, you know, in bit and heart. And it was Hearts were playing. It was only, I mean, so that would be, when was that? 2018. So he'd be 8. He'd be just, no, it wasn't 8. 2018, 2000. He was just coming up in 8 years old. In fact, he was 7, and I took him to see Rangers. He was a Hibs supporter, and my first time at Ibrox was Rangers against Hibs when I was 7 coming up on 8, and he was 7 coming up on 8, and I took him to. I mean, he asked to go. He wanted to go, and I also took him to his first Scotland game, and it was against Portugal. My first Scotland game was against Portugal, and it was quite. Yeah. But I took him to, and it was Russell Martin scoring his only goal for Rangers. We beat Hearts 2-0 in the league, and Jamie Murphy got the other goal. But he was quite happy the Jambos were getting beat, and he got to see Russell Martin scoring. So it did actually mean something nice to me. That's a bit of a stretch maybe, in finding a reason to like Russell Martin's playing career at Rangers, which was awful. But when Russell Martin's getting mentioned, that was all I really kind of knew about him. All I could think it was his time at Rangers, and I knew he played for Scotland as well, etc. But these videos they're putting out, and then of course because it's a new head coach, you go in and watch other videos of him. I did anyway, but I think I might be the last Rangers supporter in the world to see the video where he's interviewed by Gary Lineker for Gary Lineker's The Rest is Football podcast. What an industry! It's an industry Gary Lineker has got there. I didn't realise. The rest is history, the rest is politics, the rest is entertainment. That's all Gary Lineker. And I didn't know he actually owns a production company or joint owns it with 2 guys, a producer for Sky and a producer for the BBC. And of course, COVID hits, everybody's stuck in the house. They want to hear podcasts. Oof, Gary Lineker, everything he touches, didn't get booked. There's something not right about that. But he's basically in Gary Lineker's kitchen. It's a month or so, I think, after he gets sacked by Southampton. If you haven't seen it, go and look it up. The Rest is Football. Russell Martin, and it's Russell Martin talking for about an hour about his whole life in Gary Lineker's kitchen, and it's amazing. It's a really, really interesting thing. I think the one thing that got me, that drew me straight in there straight away, and it is total hypocrisy. I want to find reasons to love our new head coach and that, but his dad was born in the same hospital as me. He talked a lot. Obviously, it's well known now. We'll all know it now as Rangers supporters stalking him on social media in the same kind of fashion I'm talking about this now. But his dad was a bit of a wild guy, ends up in jail, inveterate gambler. I think he'd knocked his mum about a few times as well. He'd knocked his wife, Russell Martin's mum, about a few bit in front of the boys and that, and was kind of really hard on Russell and his big brothers. Really quite intimidating the way he was encouraging them to be good at the football and what have you, to play football. But as Russell Martin said, he just grew up wanting to get his dad's admiration as much as he wanted to prove him wrong as well. You know, because so he must have been quite a bit of a bully boy with the boys as well, Russell Martin's dad. So, but his own father, was much the same, Russell Martin's grandfather. So his brother, apparently, like his grandfather, Russell Martin's grandfather's brother, was based in Kilmarnock whenever this was. That his grandfather was, you know, being a bit of a dog or whatever in the marriage. So his wife, Russell Martin's grandmother, had persuaded him to move to Scotland, hoping that his brother would look after him. His brother would kind of calm him down a bit, and apparently it didn't really work, and they were soon back down in London. But while they were in Scotland, Russell Martin's dad was born, and Russell Martin says he stayed in Kilmarnock, and it was in the Irvine Hospital in Ayr. It means Ayrshire, you know, in Irvine Central. Buck Ridden as well, but that's where I was born. Same places the woman of I was voting against. Well, if it was Alex Salmond was the leader at the time at Indie Ref, but his successor in the SNP, I think she's from Buttery Hill in Irvine. But I'm from Ardrossan, but the nearest big it was Irvine that all guys my age were born in, and I can't be much younger than Russell Martin's dad. But that was quite so straight away. I was like, oof. No, you're right, and that drags you in. That gives you an excuse to feel connected. I'd seen him playing for Scotland as well. Russell Martin, obviously, I go to most Scotland games, but it was all part of this kind of consumerism in the Russell Martin world, and it's working. I don't even remember Davide Ancelotti anymore, and I think Davide Ancelotti, who I was given it, he's my main choice, he's my number one choice. Galen Balag really let us down. He really let us down with his behaviour. Guillem Balag is a journalist I had a lot of time for. Very interesting because he's got the skinny and so much Spanish stuff, obviously. But the whole thing of trying to hoor, try to pimp, really, Davide Ancelotti to us with promises of him bringing Real Madrid players, and then the next day saying, "Oh, you didn't really think I was serious about that." This is what happens with Rangers support. We don't take that shit. No, maybe it's since 2012 we've got a bit more uptight about that kind of stuff, but we just prosecute things in a way that other supporters don't. And Balag was soon forced to come out and say, "All right, no, it wasn't true." But you knew I was joking anyway. It's an article on BBC, mate. You were just lying to us, and now you're admitting that you were lying. But I think what's happened with Davide Ancelotti is I think he's got himself mixed up. His dad's done that thing that a dad will do. He's borrowed his eyes. He just knows his dad's. He's taken the Brazil assistant manager job now, Davide Ancelotti, after being linked with Rangers and Como and various other club jobs. But I think what's happened there is his dad, David, and Ancelotti's wife, like David's mum, has just went, your dad wants you. What, David, your dad wants you. Okay. So come here, I'm just looking at this team sheet here. Borrow your eyes. Have you got these varifocals a mother? Can you just have a look at that? Is that Alexsandro and Alexandro? That's two different guys, eh? The one is that it's Alex, because one's like a left centre half, and the other one's a left wing back. And they're right next to each other on the team sheet, and I'm just in the door here, and I'm seeing one's called like Alex, Christian name, Sandro, surname, and the other one's called Alexandro, all one word. Is that this? Aye, Dad, that's it. That's definitely it. You go, aye, no, it's definitely it, Dad. That's what it says. I just couldn't see these specs are murder, man. I need to get my eyes tested. But we get suitcases there for, son. What's the suit you? Are you coming to visit? Are you coming to stay? We'll get you a job, David. We'll get you. I just you can stay in the garage the new. I'll get you a wee job, son. Don't you worry about it. Dad will look after you as usual. So we're not getting him just now. Alexander, my name is Alexandersson. Well, it's been building up inside of me for I don't know how long. I don't know why, but I keep thinking something's bound to go wrong. But she looks in my eyes and makes me realize when she says, "Don't worry, baby, don't worry, baby. Everything will turn out all right. Don't worry, baby, don't worry, baby." Brian Wilson, rest in peace, the second 82-year-old genius to leave us this month. Musical genius, and I'm sorry to insult his legacy there with putting him through the filter of my awful voice, but that is a very appropriate song for all of us just now. I think the Teddy Bears, "Don't Worry Baby, Everything Will Be Alright." We've been singing that to ourselves the last 13 years, and it has been proven to be true. My name is Alexandersson, and so is the guy who played against Rangers for Gothenburg when they put us out in Walter's last European campaign for Rangers before the first time he was at the club when Gothenburg put us out the Champions League's Nicholas Alexandersson, Swedish international. He scored against England in the 2002 World Cup. I remember seeing him playing. I first noticed him playing for Sweden against Brazil at the Umbro tournament. We've switched to Umbro again this season. The Umbro tournament at Villa Park. This guy called Alexandersson. But that guy's called, it's the same as Alexsandro is like Italian for Alexander, and it's Alexsandro. I'm all mixed up with the two Brazilian guys. But Alexandersson, it's spelled a bit different, but that guy's got my name. It's quite, Alexandersson scores against England. That was quite cool. Quite liked hearing that. And of course, Walter Smith ends up signing him for Everton. When Walter Smith goes down to Everton, he played for Everton, Alexandersson. So that's always been, it's always quite a wee kind of thing. So Russell Martin, he's the man. He is the man. People are upset. I think more and more people, I think the more you hear from the likes of Marath and the likes of Kavanagh, everything feels different. There is a sea change. There is a mood change. You couldn't imagine them working with Barry Ferguson. And Barry might be Barry felt like a kind of slightly backwards move in terms of, he felt like a backwards move in terms of the long term for the club. but he felt like it was a good move in the way he saw out the season. It was a pity he got us through a massive round in Europe. He's got Jose Mourinho as a scalp, has Barry. I think it all worked out perfectly. It was a perfect appointment in the interim. It was a kudos for Patrick Stewart. But with Russell Martin, it just feels feels that you can feel it moving into place. Not just because Marath and Kavanagh were talking about me. It's got blue, electric blue. That's the colour of my room where I will sit. He's got the sound and the vision. There's that picture that's on Russell Martin's Wikipedia page. Look up Russell Martin on Wikipedia. I think it's a picture that's still there, and I'm assuming it's when he's MK Dons manager, because there's a lot of empty navy blue seats in the background. It looks like he could be at Hampden, but he's never been a manager of a team at Hampden. This is a pre-season friendly or something. It could be the Hawthorns, perhaps, maybe Preston North End, Deepdale. I don't know, but it's dark blue seats in the background. They're pretty empty, and he's got a navy blue raincoat on, and I think it's just the hair and the beard, the cut of his jib, and he's facing completely the opposite way of David Bowie in the cover art for the album Low. But his collar's down, Russell Martin's collar's down, but there's just something about it so opposite, even in the colouring as well, of that iconic. They think it started the casual culture, Bowie with the hood pictured facing the other way in the cover of Low, and everything's orange and everything's kind of bright but also low on the front of that iconic album. But there's just something about Martin and that, it just kind of captured my imagination in a really weird way that sums up how I feel about him just now. He's never been wanted anywhere in his management life. He's telling Gary Lineker this. He's never really been wanted anywhere. Nothing's come easy to him. He doesn't care if Rangers don't want him. I think he wants us. He wants to manage us, and that's what really matters. He's a modern coach. Tactics, strategies are one thing, but I think relationships with players are something else. It's the other half of the job. He's the opposite in terms of the type of football he wants to play from Jose Mourinho. And he's obviously, right just now, Russell Martin is opposite from Jose Mourinho in terms of trophies he's won. But do you remember the footage of Jose Mourinho after he left Inter? We'd won Serie A, he'd won the Champions League with him. He did everything really he'd set out to do there. And it's Marco Materazzi. And this is what I mean about sentimentality, is the other side of dank cynicism. Materazzi did one of the most disgusting things ever. He scored in that World Cup final, but to get rid of Zidane, his game's been shit, blah, blah, blah. It's scummy behaviour. It was awful what he's done to Zidane there. And my only regret is Zidane didn't actually hurt him. He'd put him in the coupon. If you're going to go Zizou, do it right. But Materazzi's outside in the street, just outside the San Siro, or outside the dressing room, whatever it is, and he's in tears, and Mourinho's in tears. They can't talk about it because this kinship they've built up, this brotherhood that they've built up, is having to, Mourinho's having to take the Real Madrid job. He's having to go to Real Madrid. But that's the kind of thing I think Russell Martin's, it's proven that this is what wins. It's proven you have to have more than just a kind of cynical or a kind of technological idea about the football. You've got to build up a passion for the club itself, and for winning, and for getting that extra edge out the players, and building up a sense of community amongst the team. And I think it's no accident that Thelwell and Stewart have been front and centre since the Monday that Russell Martin came in, because this is how we're going to operate now. A team behind the scenes, and Marath and Kavanagh just talking about Russell Martin, about Kevin Thelwell, about Patrick Stewart, building up this team spirit type thing. We've got Thelwell and Purdy as well as another team below that, who I think sound like Victorian detectives who would are crossing the class barrier. It would work out better if it wasn't Kevin Thelwell, if it was like Sebastian Thelwell, and Dan Purdy. Very good, Purdy. I'll have a pint of bitter. A pint of bitter for you, sir. I thought you were a sherry man. Well, if I can get half the brain power you've got, we'll through the bitter, we'll soon find who's killing all these chambermaids or something. I don't. But it's Thelwell and Purdy sounds like a good TV show as far as I'm concerned. We should look into that. But the main thing is, Russell Martin is just Mr. Sincerity, and he's talking about the players and how he likes to get his arm around them, and how his childhood, where his dad was a bully, a lot of aggression in the house. His dad did jail time when he got moved to, because of his gambling debts, they had to move to a rougher area of Brighton, and he said they moved, was it next door to or above a bookies. Now, I worked in a bookies as a cashier for a few years, various bookies, and my dad was an inveterate gambler and like that, but you know it's like West of Scotland, or just the whole of Scotland, the whole of Britain, whatever, it's a thing, working class guys. You go out on a Saturday, you get your line on, you get your fixed odds coupon on, you bet the horses, whatever. A lot of guys like the greyhounds and all that as well. So it's something we've all grown up with. You can associate with it as well. But I think he ends up, when he's in dressing rooms, nobody scares him. He ends up captain of Peterborough when he's like 22 years old and leads him to promotion. The youngest captain in Peterborough United's history. And leads him to promotion as 22 years old, because he becomes captain just about everywhere he goes, and then he becomes manager, obviously, and it's just about, he says nothing ever really kind of scares him in terms of players being aggro or whatever, and his managerial hero, or his managerial, his biggest influence is Paul Lambert. I know we don't like the sound of that, but we do in terms of quality. Paul Lambert won the Champions League as a player, and he's a hell of a player with Celtic as well. He's a hell of a player with Scotland. He's a class act, Paul Lambert, and he did really well at Norwich and I think he had Russell Martin at Wycombe Wanderers as well, but Russell Martin's saying in this interview with Gary Lineker that Paul Lambert would come into the dressing room, and because he'd brought into the Norwich dressing room, for example, and because he had brought Russell Martin with him from Wycombe, some players would think, with him from Wycombe, teammates of Russell Martin's would be thinking, oh, Martin will be alright, he's going to stick, but Paul Lambert would have a go at Russell Martin before he'd have a go at anybody else, and he would go in hard on him, because he knew Russell Martin could take it, but also it made it look like, that old kind of thing that somebody of my age can appreciate, was you have a go at the top guy. If you're the manager and you're gutting out your players, you have a go at the captain, you have a go at the guys who've been there longest, so that the rest of the players know they're no safe, nobody's safe. And Russell Martin could take all that, and he understood it, so he's able to associate with players. It's all about relationships as far as he's concerned. It's all about getting on with players. He does Pilates. He believes he had to look into veganism because of a problem he actually had. Is it colitis? An actual digestive problem that he had, so he had to look into changing his diet, and he ends up getting into veganism as well. And it's one of these things that he's getting kind of slagged for by guys my age. But I was at that Scotland, I mentioned this in my last podcast, the last Scotland game of the season there, where we get beat 3-1 at home by Iceland. And what happened with Kieran Slicker in that game, it's a lot of Scotland keepers, including Liam Kelly, various injuries, so the squad's already a bit thin. You've got the whole connection with Norwich, and Paul Lambert came into Norwich to succeed Brian Gunn. It's Brian Gunn's son, Angus Gunn, who's the goalkeeper for Scotland in that game against Iceland, who's been released by Norwich. He's not the best goalkeeper in the world, the boy. He comes on and he gets injured in the first 5 minutes, and that's bad enough usually for any player. You've got to come on as a sub when somebody you've not been warming up as a sub properly 5 minutes into a game. But if you're a goalkeeper, it's even worse somehow. It's even more unexpected that you'll come on. It's unexpected we'd lost Robbie McCrory during the warm-up for that game, that Scotland game. Kieran Slicker's not even playing for Ipswich Town. He's just a young fella. He's Scottish, however he's Scottish through his grandpa or something like that. It's desperation stuff. I think Steve Clarke should have tried harder to get a more experienced goalkeeper before that, but he's got to come on 5 minutes into the game, and I realised he'd made a massive mistake for 2 of the goals. I thought, but when I got home and I watched the telly, it could have been 3 of them. It could have been all 3 goals Kieran Slicker is to blame for, and it's because he's come on the park cold in what's supposed to be a brilliant night for him. Getting capped by Scotland turns into an absolute nightmare. It's the most attention that's ever been paid to him, and it's all bad, and it wasn't his fault. He's making the actual mistakes, obviously, but it's because he's cold, he's inexperienced, and his vastly experienced teammates certainly weren't helping him out. Neither was his vastly experienced manager, but my heart went out to the boy. It was maybe if I was the same age as Kieran Slicker, I'd probably be in the stands giving, he's a dud, what's going on there? But when you're older, you realise what that must be doing to the boy. I think a need for compassion in modern day football is the exposure these guys are in, and plus the social media side of things. The best sports people in the world are just getting reams and reams of abuse. So I'm glad that we have that kind of manager who his first thought will be for his players, because that's the way you get the best out of them. Look, I think we all want a new Rangers. If you're my age anyway, you want a new Rangers manager to come down the tunnel for his first kind of photo opportunity, or striding into, well, it's usually the Blue Room or whatever. It's an imagined kind of backing tune, you know. For me, it would be like Kasabian, or Club Foot, or kind of Underdog, or Love Spreads with the Stone Roses. You know, I'm sorry, Stevie G, I know Liverpool hates Manchester and you love Coldplay, but or you get maybe for the return of Walter Smith in 2007, something like a kind of icon, and who's just so classy, definitely going to work. It would be Debussy's Claire de Lune, you know, where it's serene, kind of classical, nostalgic, but just basically sublime. I think Russell Martin's theme tune, his introduction music to Rangers, it's neither side. It's neither of those two kind of extremes. He wouldn't want the first kind of, you know, Kasabian and maybe the whanging guitar at the start of Love Spreads. He wouldn't allow that. I don't think Russell Martin's not that kind of guy. It's too cocky, you know. And obviously the Claire de Lune, the classic sublime, the kind of classical music. He's not earned that yet. He's not earned that kind of theme tune. But it's no the Benny Hill theme tune music either that a lot of supporters were making out when Russell Martin was appointed. I would say for Russell Martin, I know what tune it's going to be, but I would say first of all, I think there's a point that the 49ers, Enterprises, Andrew Kavanagh, they give off very Portishead dummy vibes. I know that's bad. If you don't know what that album's all about, that's a bad title for you, dummy. But check it out, that album. It's one of the greatest albums of all time. All my references are very mid-90s. But check it out if you don't know about it. But even the names of the tracks: Sour Times, Glory Box, Roads, Numb, Biscuit, Mr. Ons, all that kind of stuff. It's that kind of dystopian acknowledgement of how bad things have been, you know, battles that we've lost, but also taking on board the grind that we've got to go through, and how difficult it's going to be. It's an acknowledgement, and also a kind of balls out, hardcore, let's have it, gambler type. And I should have mentioned that, probably Russell Martin's dad. But I think Sour Times, Portishead, that was probably Dummy, Portishead's first album, should be applied to maybe the takeover in general, the state of the club financially, where we are just now, the gauntlet that's been laid down by Marat and Kavanagh. But Russell Martin himself, his entire energy, apart from the fact I'm using the word energy about him, aura, vibe, his truth, man, his truth, his intro music, it would be summed up. His truth, his energy, his vibe would be summed up by the start of Radiohead's Subterranean Homesick Alien. I know I've talked about this tune so many times on this podcast. I'm talking about it usually because it's the conduit for my favourite lyrics. I don't know my music. I don't understand music. I don't know the terminology. I don't know if it's a chord progression or whatever. But I tell all my friends, but they'd never believe me. They'd think that I'd finally lost it completely, shown the stars, and you know, they'd shut me away. But I'd be all right. I love that. I just love it. It's magical. It's God. It's a joke song as well. It's just all about uptightness and boredom, and how it seems crazy to believe there's a way out of the uptightness and boredom that you get as a human being. It's a song that kind of turns misery to joy via kind of desperate imaginings, and says, hang the consequences. And yeah, that's where we are right now. But I'm not talking about the whole song. I'm not talking about the bit where that lyric comes in. I'm talking about the beginning of the song. The way it comes in, the way the music at the start of this song. We're talking about introductions to songs that are introductions to managers. In the intro for Subterranean Homesick Alien, it's that fragile kind of hope. It's full of fragile hope. It's a music so delicately beautiful. It's very fragility. It's kind of crystalline transparency of childish hope regained. It's offering itself tentatively to a cynical world, yet using its innate curiosity and beauty to bypass the Philistines and overwhelm us all with a crushing beauty. And I think that's Russell Martin. I think that is Russell Martin. It's definitely his intro music. Those first kind of bars, phrases, notes. I don't know what the terminology is for for Subterranean Homesick Alien from Radiohead's OK Computer album. Again, a peerless album of the 90s, phenomenal. It's just right, take it, listen to it. I'll put the link, if you don't know it for some reason, I'll try and put the link to Radiohead's Subterranean Homesick Alien on this here podcast of mine. But it's take it right up to the point where Tom York starts singing. And even the first, 5 words, breath of the morning. But don't go any further than that. Don't go any further than that. That, from the moment it comes on, that tune, until the breath of the morning, and I keep forgetting the smell of the warm summer air. But don't take just the breath of the morning. Just take up the breath of the morning. That's it. That's how I feel just now about Russell Martin taking over at Rangers. That's where we are now. You know, it's a beautiful enough place to be. We're in the middle of this. Is it the lightest night of the year? Was it last night? Is it tonight? It's not looking very light just now. The rain coming down in Glasgow, but you're right in the middle of the year, right in the middle of summer. You're getting enveloped in a kind of warmth, beauty, and happiness. Now that's the calendar. That's the weather. But right now, in football terms, it's just a promise. The air is thick with promise. We need to get busy if we're going to enjoy the rest of that song, and we need to stick with it. You know, it's too late to revert to the old times. They're not classics anymore. The old tunes, they're not classics anymore. 1 in 9 in a row was classic, but the way we did it just doesn't scan these days. It's just an opening line that I'm talking about here, an intro of a tune so different. It's like nothing we've ever heard before. It promises a whole new way of enjoying life, and OK Computer became my favourite album. Is it of all time? You get the Holy Bible, you've got By the Manics, you've got Portishead's Dummy, as I say, a few great albums out there, but the Consortium selected Martin on 4 criteria. He's a coach, his coaches in a style that they want. I'm assuming that meant that the style of football he plays, he's going to build a kind of culture that they want. He'll develop talent, and he can win games. It's a loving. It's 11. It's based primarily on our knowledge, I say, of shysters and con men from the past, but this feels more convincing. It feels the way they're talking about Martin, the reasons they want him, and he seems to fit in with that. As I say, you can't imagine us having started this season with a Barry Ferguson. The idea, there's this idea, of course, that he's too airy-fairy because he's expressed, you know, he's been a member of the Green Party. He's got a bit involved with politics. He's talking about veganism. But I think for us, mostly, as Rangers Daz, it's because he talks so much about expansive football. He sees it as it's more like he just has an ideology. That in itself is enough to make Rangers supporters doubt him, I think. But the idea that he's no gritty at all. He beat Cardiff home and away in the same season. This is the thing I found out from this Gary Lineker podcast interview with him. I didn't realise this. You know, the big derby between Cardiff and Swansea, the kind of Welsh derby within the English setup, and they're not always in the same league, but it's over 100 years old, and apparently it had never been done. Neither of those teams had ever won both their meetings. You only meet twice in the English league system in a season, and nobody had ever won both the derbies home and away in any one season. Russell Martin goes in there and he does it twice in a row. Not only does he win home and away against Cardiff in his first season as Swansea manager, he repeats the feat the following season, which is quite amazing to see. He went to MK Dons as well, one of the most hated clubs in Britain, so you'll have no problems with how much folk hate Rangers. But the youngest ever captain of Peterborough, as I say, went a 25-game unbeaten run in the English Football League to get Southampton, in the Championship, to get Southampton promoted versus Daniel Farke's Leeds in the playoff final. And this is Farke is the guy who sold him, who loaned him out to us. He was a Norwich manager, Daniel Farke, when Russell Martin was coming towards the end of his playing career. He'd been at Norwich City for like 9 years. He was a legend there. So Farke is a guy who loans him out to Rangers, and then at the end of that season, when we send him back, he gets rid of him. And I don't know if Farke was still Norwich manager when Russell Martin goes back there with his Swansea team and wins 3-0 a few years later. I don't think he would have been. But he beats Farke, obviously, in the Championship playoff final the season before, the one just ended, to get Southampton promoted. He beats Farke's Leeds. So he gets revenge. He's got stuff about him. He's captained and managed a team to the Championship the English Championship, but it was the richest game in world football, they call it, winning the Championship playoff final at Wembley. I think we've got real I have worries that Russell Martin cannot, no experience as a manager in European competition. I love European competition. I love that Rangers have been doing so well in Europe this last season. I want that to carry on, and I think that Russell Martin's never managed a team in Europe, but he has managed in the Championship extensively, and that is the 5th hardest league in the world. Probably it's the 5th richest, the 5th toughest. I think sometimes fluctuates. I think sometimes it goes 4th and 3rd, even certainly in terms of money. But teams can't stay. The teams that are getting promoted into the Premiership just now are getting promoted into the Premier League in England. Are getting promoted because of the parachute payments they get from the Premier League. But they've still not got enough money to deal with the might of having Premier League money when they get in there. It's becoming more and more of a closed shop, but that money does trickle down to the Championship and make it richer than I think it's most leagues in the world, other than perhaps the Bundesliga and La Liga, maybe Serie A, the French league as well, Ligue 1. But it's sometimes it's kind of 5th or 4th richest league in the world and the hardest. So it's quite a hard level to manage at. That can probably see him all right for European competition. But I've got so much to say that I'm doing that thing where I'm kind of choking. I'm choking on it all. All 3 of his previous kind of head coaching stints, he likes to dominate the ball and press high. It looks the same when you read about it like that, but with each side it's different the way he's arrived at these teams, the way he's had to implement it. He leaves us at the end. He has that kind of half season at us 2017-18. It's an absolute nightmare. That end of the season, it's as low as we get, and then in comes Stephen. It's as low as we get in the top flight, losing 4-0 to the Celtic in the Scottish Cup semi-final, losing 5-0 to Celtic at Parkhead in the day they win the league, and it should have been more than 5. Absolute nightmare. But in comes Steven Gerrard, and it's a wee bit. Russell Martin's going back to Norwich by that point. They don't want him anymore, and he goes to Walsall. He moves to Walsall, I think as a free agent. He's released by Norwich, and he goes to Walsall. I think it's about October 2018 in a player coaching role there in League One. And I don't know if it's the travelling or whatever. He plays about 8 games for them, league games, and he only lasts until January. And then he goes to MK Dons. He drops down a league, goes into League 2 with MK Dons. And if you see him, there's a few interviews that I saw where Russell Martin has just taken over as manager. MK Dons, which I think is November 2019. He goes into MK Dons and they're struggling to get out of League 2. They've got the stadium and that. I mean, Pete Winkelman is the chairman, so that is literally beneath them. And I'm not saying Russell Martin manages it on his own, but obviously he's part of the squad. He goes in there and he plays for the rest of that season, and they get promoted. I think they win promotion the last day of the season. They go back up to League 1. And then the following season, it's not going well. I think Paul Tisdale was the manager. I think they were doing 19th or something in the relegation zone. And Winkelman sacks the management team and just gives Russell Martin the job. Offers him it basically overnight. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. But you see lots of interviews with him at that time, and he looks about a stone lighter than he was at the time he was playing for Rangers, which is well over a year before that. So when he says that his time at Rangers as a player was so bad because he wasn't fully fit, he had injuries and that, and you can actually see it. He actually looks fitter in his early days in management than he did as a player when he was at Ibrox a year or so before. So he has a point there. But he goes into MK Dons and he manages them. He stabilises them in the league, and then he does even better the following season in League One. And then Swansea come in and they take him in the summer of, I've got this written down here, there's so many dates. I think Swansea come in and get him in the summer of 2021. It's basically the 1st of August. He's prepping his pre-season with MK Dons. Swansea come in. It's terrible. He has to tell Pete Winkelman, who's absolutely raging. Good, because Pete Winkelman's a scumbag. He's not a scumbag, so I don't know the full story there, but we know what happened with Wimbledon and MK Dons. So, but he's eventually forgiven him. He has to take the job. He has to seize the opportunity to go up to the Championship with Swansea City, who are all set up. And I think he'd already learned lessons for Swansea as a player. He takes them to, was it 15th in his first season with Swansea, despite only arriving there right at the start of the season. And then the following season, he takes them to 10th, and that's when Southampton come in and they get him. they take him on for 2022, 2023, and he gets him promoted. He gets him promoted to the Premier League in his first season there. So quite the management, quite the run, quite the deep end into the management, but he's ready for it because he took his first badges when he was 18 years old. He's been taking notes everywhere he goes. He's worked with Scottish managers. I'm just basically paraphrasing this Gary Lineker podcast. You should watch it if you haven't seen it already. Was it John Gorman and Alec Neil and he works with Darren Ferguson at Peterborough, and it's Paul Lambert with Norwich. And I don't remember the game they get beat 7-1. Was it 7-1 at home by Colchester at Carrow Road when they were in League One? I think Norwich fans were actually looking forward to, well, at least we can cruise up League One, have a season of getting promoted in fine style. We can enjoy winning games every week, and then we'll be back in the Championship struggle to get back into the top flight. But it got after an absolute horror show under Brian Gunn. I mean, folk running on the park and throwing their season ticket books at Brian Gunn in the Norwich bench. Things like that don't happen at Carrow Road. So he had to go. He had to go straight away, and they brought Paul Lambert in from Wickham. And he fired them. 2 successive promotions, and they went back up in the Premier League, and he was keeping them there so well, Paul Lambert, that Aston Villa came in and took him, and he would have taken Russell Martin with him to Aston Villa, but he left in bad circumstances. Norwich didn't want to get rid of Paul Lambert, so they'd fallen out with Aston Villa. They were never going to sell him to Aston Villa, but the thing to notice, as I say, in his playing career, is obviously I've got this all written down, but I went kind of a bit mad with the mad handwriting because there was so much to take a note of. I was so kind of trying to convince myself that he was the man for the job, and then there was more and more stuff getting said in this podcast that was making me think, I love you. Do I just love you because I need to love you? Probably. But the idea that he's not getting any kind of grit in this, if you don't get the tales of his childhood and what he had to survive there, that in itself makes him an instant leader in every dressing room he goes into, because he's beyond hard. He's not scared of anyone to the point where he actually wants to help at the hard cases in the dressing room. He sees through the aggression. He goes to Carrow. He does the whole thing to Swansea, to Cardiff each season when he's at Swansea City. He takes Swansea City to Carrow Road and wins 3-0. As I say, and that's the proudest he's ever been, because he was known as the Cafu of Norfolk by the Norwich City supporters when he was there for the best part of 9 years. He's got that bit of magic about him as well, that he plays his 200th game for Norwich is against Brighton and Hove Albion, where he started his youth career, but his hometown team. And he plays his 300th game against Brighton and Hove Albion. And it might just be a bit, it's a coincidence, the randomness of the fixture computer or whatever, but he scores in one of the games as well. So he's got that feeling that we like to have at Rangers. We like to have somebody, there's a kind of sign about him. He starts off with Lewis. He gets released by the youth set up at Brighton, so he goes to Lewis, the non-league club, and he's cleaning his uncle's boozer, cleaning the toilets and his uncle's boozer then to earn money, and that's how he finds out he's short-sighted, his eyesight, isn't he? Right, so to go and get his, I don't think it's, it would be glasses and contact lenses in the days where he first found out about it, but that's probably no help to him in his youth career at Brighton. But this is the kind of life he's been leading as a young guy, but he's eager to learn. Youngest ever captain of Peterborough, leads them to promotion, and they know him as the Cafu of Norfolk, so he's going to be working with the blue Cafu at Ibrox. That'll work out quite well. He's the champion. He's the captain of Norwich when they win the Championship playoff against Middlesbrough, and then he's manager of Southampton when they win the Championship playoff against Leeds United. So it's hard stuff that he's been involved in. It's real pressure situations he's been involved in, in his personal life, just his upbringing, and it's. I think he's a great character. I think he's ready for this. He's ready for this club. He'll be 40 in January. Will he still be Rangers manager then, though? I think the most he should be doing at this point in his management, I think he needs to be in Europe. I think he needs to be in Europe, and maybe that's why he's come to Rangers. But I think that's also got to do with his style, with his need to play possession football, with his need to play attacking football. He's done that everywhere he's been so far, management-wise, and this is where people were kind of uptight about him, Rangers supporters in particular, I would say. But like for example, he likes to make players kind of swap positions in training or play different positions so they can understand each other's game. A bit like Arcade Fire, they've got they're all multi instrumentalists, so they'll take a turn at playing different instruments when they're on tour during their concert. But it's the same tune you get. So it's something they did at the Ajax youth system for years. They probably still do. They make players go and play. Not the role they're most suited to, but they play all their teammates' roles so they can appreciate their teammates, so they can be part of a team, so they can bring it all together. But I don't know. I mean, what's that going to involve? Tav playing at centre half? I mean, that'd be absolutely mental. Igaman's going to play wide left instead of through the middle. Instead of as a centre forward, that'd be crazy. But yeah, Red Van Yilmaz, can you imagine him playing it like outside left or something, outside right even? That'd be absolutely nuts. You can leave Dujon Sterling out of that idea anyway. Dujon's is literally got it all covered, apart from maybe the goalkeeper's role. But if he's trying to play sixes, he likes to play a six at the centre half, swap the sixes in the centre half so they know how to link up with each other better during the game. But he's going to, it's not as if he's going to play Nico Raskin centre half, because it's not as if Nico Raskin's any good in the air. Which could be he, didn't he? I think we're suited. I think us and Russell Martin are totally suited. He talks, I think he's articulate rather than just one of those guys who just kind of repeats buzzwords and phrases. He's got so much more substance about him, I think, than Michael Beale, who a lot of people are maybe worrying he might be. There's zero hint of desperation either when he's talking, Russell Martin. It's just he's got kind of clout, ambition, and a vision. I think he's articulate rather than just one of those guys who uses buzzwords and phrases. There's jargon in there when he's talking, like in that Gary Lineker interview, like narrative and changing the story or our story. Those kind of phrases are in there a lot. But I believe he uses them with a comparatively extensive vocabulary and a genuine subtlety of thought. When he went from player to manager overnight at MK Dons, he's telling the players to just keep calling me Russ, because he knew the transition might be a bit much for them. He's just been, up until November, he's been their teammate, now suddenly is their manager. But some called him Gaffer straight away, and he understood why when he stood there in the dressing room for the first time as their Gaffer. He's not sitting in the bench at his locker waiting for something. He's the one having to stand up and do the talking before a game. He's got the tracksuit on and the manager's coat, I'm assuming. And he suddenly felt really weird standing in the other side of the dressing room. And he said it wasn't his relationship with these guys that had changed, but the dynamic. It's just wee things like that. That's a good reading of the game. That's a good analysis. A subtlety of thought. He's talking about he's playing international football for Scotland. If you hate the Tartan Army, well, in that Gary Lineker interview, he emphasises his Britishness and basically the fact that he'd no feeling for Scotland whatsoever. It was just through his dad being born in Scotland, but he emphasises his Britishness rather than his Englishness or Scottishness. And he learned Flower of Scotland. He learned the lyrics to Flower of Scotland in the toilet before the game, because Gordon Strachan, who was the manager at the time, wanted them all to be singing Flower of Scotland. So that's the respect he has for the Scottish national anthem. But he's talking about playing international football and the cultural context of different nationalities. I thought that was a nice wee phrase he used there, talking about the intricacies of it. And apart from, it's not just the articulacy of that statement, it leads to his coaching approach. He talks about the 2 times he went to Macedonia. He talks about playing against Macedonia and other wee countries like other smaller nations like that. And I remember Scotland twice coming up against Macedonia away from home with varying results. But he said he noticed that there was technical aspects to their game which showed up the British style to a certain extent. They had a set way, a plan of playing, whereas the British way, like, basically England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, they would rely much more on it. I'm kind of paraphrasing again here, but it was, for them, they were just relying on players to be technically more gifted and just putting a lot of effort, and that would eventually win the day. And a lot of times it does. But you could see that there was something there about having a set style. And then when he's a player, he comes up against Leon Britton of Swansea. Not the Tory minister, but Leon Britton of Swansea, who you might remember is a really small guy, barely 5 foot tall, and he was an attacking midfielder for Swansea. and I think this is when he's at Norwich, maybe at Peterborough as well, Russell Martin as a player, and he said it would a full-on battle, just a proper physical kind of British-style battle. So, Martin's playing centre-half, full-back. I think he played sitting midfield as well, or a defensive mid. And then one day, he's playing against Swansea again, a bit further down the line. This is where Roberto Martinez has taken over as manager of Swansea. He says, "No, Leon Britton's nowhere to be seen. He's totally withdrawn. He's got into this defensive kind of sitting midfielder's role, basically at the bottom of a diamond, and he can't get anywhere near him. He's not been asked to come up against him, and I think that's piqued his interest. What's going on here? And it's an interesting thing. Now, you saw the Swansea podcaster on Rangers Review. We all did. The boy was only on there for 20 minutes, and he's put the fear of God into everybody that it will take 3-4 months. He said, it'll take 3 or 4 months before his style kicks in, and it'll do your nothing before that. Up until that point, you'll be pulling your hair out, especially older fans, guys like me, not get it fucking forward types. He says, but then when it kicks in, it's great, it's fantastic to watch, and he loved it. He loved when Russell Martin was Swansea manager. But I think what we have to do, and I'm going to go pure Pamela Bondi here, I'm going to go Donald Trump's kind of White House press secretary, just start fake news. If it doesn't suit me, it's fake news. I think that young fella he didn't say a lot in Rangers Review. He was quite taciturn, I think, maybe just shy, I don't know. But he was also saying that Rangers was the last club on earth he thought Russell Martin was going to go to. Yeah, I remember us playing Wrexham, and they probably hate Swansea City. I imagine Swansea will certainly hate them these days. But I remember Wrexham coming to Ibrox. It was the first time I'd seen one of the bigger Welsh, the better known Welsh clubs in the flesh, and they were all it was all Celtic flags and all that kind of stuff. They're Celtic. Imagine coming from a Celtic nation. That must be really embarrassing. But they didn't have a lot of time for Rangers. Did not have a lot of time for Rangers, and I'm just wondering if there's maybe a bit of anti-Rangers sentiment going on in there. See, I'm going total Pamela Bondi. They've got an agenda. They've totally got an agenda. So what I did was, because this fellow was so kind of negative, or telling us a lot of things we don't want to hear, because he won't get that kind of time, obviously, at Rangers. He won't get 3 or 4 months to settle in his style. I was lucky enough to talk to my friend, and I'm not going to mention his name in case I attract bad attention to him, but that's a book. He's basically the kind of the best writer. And When Saturday Comes, he's one of the best. Now, my friend isn't a podcaster, but he teaches journalism. He's such a good sports journalist. Rugby league, rugby union, rugby league, cricket, and football. And he's a Swansea supporter. He's 5 generations of Swansea supporters. And a mutual friend of ours got in touch, another Rangers supporter who knows him, was like, right, who was the score here? Just a private message stuff. And because he's a proper writer, properly analytical, and actually goes to watch Swansea as well whenever he possibly can, even though he's based in, I say he's written books about Swansea City. He said exactly the same as the podcaster, the young podcaster fella. It's just Russell Martin is going to it takes him a while to get going, and he also added that you'll lose to a lot of teams, or you'll not get the wins against teams that you expect to, but you'll probably beat Celtic home and away because he loves to win big, emotional, important games. So basically, we're just going to have Barry Ferguson again, or Philip Clement started that before he gets sacked. Beat Celtic 3-0 at Ibrox, get beat 1-0 off Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup. It basically sounded the same kind of thing. It will take him a while to get going, but the football eventually is lovely. It's very possession based. He only just managed to outscore his opponents. And there's a lot of maybe passing it from side to side and all that kind of possession for possession's sake. But when it works, it's great. But there's long periods that it doesn't work. So there's no reassurance to be had. But this fact that it's going to take him a while to kick in. I think we're worried that he's going to be what would you say, kind of almost intransigent about it. He's like an ideologue. This is what we're thinking. But Hugh, his book here, is the one that talks about Leon Britton and Roberto Martinez. I read in there, and Roberto Martinez, when he, towards the end of his playing career, of course, he played for Swansea City before he became their manager, and he roomed with this fella, Leon Britton, this attacking midfielder that I'm telling you about, and Leon Britton was stunned, really impressed by the fact that Roberto Martinez would read stuff. They'd read like books, when they were rooming together and away trips, and would learn things, and all, But it was him that then applies this, moves Leon Britton about and turns Leon Britton, not just extends his career. Leon Britton was a bit kind of a tendency to give the ball away as an attacking midfielder, so he puts him in a sitting role where he's got more of his own players in front of him. Does Roberto Martinez, and Russell Martin notices the difference. This is Roberto Martinez, who has just won one of the most intelligent games of international football you'll ever watch in your life, winning the Nations League for Portugal in that final against Spain, the greatest team in the world right now, in the Allianz Arena a few weeks ago, the final of the Nations League. So this is Roberto Martinez at the start of his management career, and he turns Leon Britton into the best passer in the world. By 2011, he turns Swansea then decide this is the way forward. They get in, Brendan Rodgers is one of them, they get in a host of managers, Michael Laudrup, etc., who want to play an expansive, attractive style of football. I think it's suited to the whole Swansea ethos. It becomes an ethos. And they end up, they get more money in that. They go through financial problems after they've been up in the Premier League, and they win the League Cup, their only major honour and whatever. But it's happy days for Swansea. It suits them. And this is at a time where Russell Martin is trying to play against them. And Leon Britton was the best passer in the world in 2011. He's outpassing Xavi and Iniesta and Messi at this point in time in the third flight, in the third division in England, in League One, and they win the third tier. It's 2000. They win the third tier in 2008. Do Swansea. Like 2011, he's the best passer in the world, completes more passes than anybody else in world football. But 2008, that's when Guardiola's tiki-taka is starting to take off at Barcelona, and we have Spain win the Euros, and that's the start of their run of Euros, World Cup Euros, when their style of they've got their version of tiki-taka, minus Messi, basically, Spain. And that's it. I think it only makes sense that Russell Martin starts to see this as being a winning style of football. Not just, it looks nice, I believe in, airy-fairy, kind of nice football. It works, and it works at the highest level. But he's constantly, you've heard him when he talked about the fixtures coming out on Saturday and talking about the players coming into training as they did yesterday. I'm talking to you on Tuesday night. They come in, pre-season training started yesterday, and he was talking about the players are going to have to start, they're going to have to work hard. The first thing they're going to have to do is work hard. There was none of this, they're going to have to think outside the box and blah, blah. He's telling they're going to have to be able to take on my ideas, take on our style of play. But it was also quite authoritarian, the way he was talking, and he constantly emphasises the need for fitness, the need to work hard. So don't worry, there's going to be plenty of Protestant work ethic going about, and he's part Italian as well. I think one of his grands is Italian, so I've seldom, they're going downhill a bit just now, Italy, but in doing so they still managed to win the Euros 6 years ago. I've seldom seen, 4 years ago, teams that can work as hard as Italian national teams, so we're going to be okay in those terms. I think he wants to win the Champions League. He states this as an ambition to Gary Lineker. He wants to win the Champions League as a manager. Whether he does that with us or not it remains to be seen. So right now we're all wanting Steven Gerrard. A lot of folk who didn't want Russell Martin are wanting Steven Gerrard, and obviously they're wanting the Steven Gerrard who arrived in 2018. Steven Gerrard had won the Champions League as a player. He didn't even qualify for the Champions League as a manager. I think Russell Martin's played in Europe as a player, but he's got much more chance, I think, of winning the thing, because I made this joke on Jersnet. I said it to you a few times. I knew that to go modern, we had to have a manager who is totally cerebral, is a bit of a guru, and I wanted a guy who, his playing career finished when he was 20 years old, German third division kind of stuff, because that's Thomas Tuchel and Jose Mourinho, Arrigo Sacchi, the great managers of the last kind of 30 years seem to be guys who, their playing career was so woeful that they get out of it as soon as possible, or they get an injury when they were really young, to learn the game, and Steven Gerrard has said it himself. That's why he brought Michael Beale with him when he first came to Rangers, because he hadn't learned coaching, because he was too busy being a player. He was too busy resting and recovering from massive games to be able to pick up, to train himself in training players. And we've got a manager who has done all the guru side of things, writing it all down, writing down all the best coaching sessions he's come across, he's been involved in, taking his badges at 18 years old, being a natural leader, knowing he was going to go into management, but he's playing at the same time. It's the best of both worlds. So I think there's a good chance that he could be tiki-taka. I've said it before in this pod, is a rich man's plaything. Every manager has a duty to management or coaching at this level is all about the ambition is to make the whole add up to more than the sum of the parts. And that's great when you're trying to get the third division or whatever. But it also applies when you're Pep Guardiola managing Barcelona and a Barcelona team that would win the Champions League playing 4-4-2. You've got Messi, you've got Xavi, you've got Iniesta, Carlos Puyol, Thierry Henry to start with, David Villa, and just these guys are all different level footballers. So he's making them do something even more special so they'll be remembered for all time. They played football so well. He's worked around having the best player in the world in his team and made it work, made it produce something extra special, which means he's just doing his job. But you get this thing of, I think why Russell Martin wants to come to Rangers, he'll want trophies on his CV, he'll want to get European football on his CV, but he will also want to do what Pep Guardiola did with Barcelona, which is go to a team that has natural advantages. And with us, we will have better players than everybody in Scotland other than Celtic. Celtic will be the only ones able to rival us in terms of the quality and size of our squad, and see how his style, he has done it on a wet Monday night at Gillingham, for example, when he set a record as MK Dons manager, his MK Dons side. They get beat 3-2. I've watched the goal, and on the highlights, you only get the last 12 passes or so. But they had 55 or 56, that's significant. That's symbolic. 55 or 56 passes ended up in a goal. A 55 or 56 pass move that ends up in a goal for MK Dons under the early management of Russell Martin. The first league game, the first championship game he played as manager of Southampton was at Hillsborough. They beat Sheffield Wednesday 2-1 on the night. They nearly had 1,000 completed passes, Southampton. So 987 passes they completed in the course of that game. Now, they've only won by a single goal. But he has done the thing that people are always saying, could Pep Guardiola do it if he was manager of, MK Dons, for example, in the third tier in England? Could he do it if he was manager of Swansea City in the second tier in England? Well, Russell Martin has done that bit. He now wants his chance of doing the Barcelona thing, being at a club with more resources than most of the clubs around them, and seeing how this style that he has proved he can make teams play can work at Rangers. I think that's what he wants to do, and I think that's what we need. We spent all last season complaining. I mean, the intransigence, the fact that he doesn't want to change his style. Jamie Carragher interviews him on Monday Night Football just after he's been sacked by Southampton. Could you have changed? And he says, I would have changed it. I would have made us a bit more kind of cheaty, basically. Would have been more practice in the dark arts. Would have taken fouls. Would have dived when we thought we were going to lose possession of the ball. I was maybe making us a bit too honest. Quite good stuff. Nice and bitter. But it wasn't going to greatly change his style. And he talks about how when Paul Lambert came to Norwich City, they played this style of football, attacking football, when they get out of the third tier. And I remember them going back to Colchester. I think that Norwich City side, I think they won about 5-0 at Colchester in the return game. And I thought he's actually going to end up beating them by 6 at their place just to totally avenge what he did to Brian Gunn's Norwich at the beginning of the season. That'd be one for the Norwich City fans. But he then he wins the championship the following season. Of course, up they go to the Premier League, and he said, I think they get beat off Man City, but he's like, no, we're going to keep playing the same style because it's been working for us for 2 seasons on the trot, says Paul Lambert to his Norwich players, who include captain Russell Martin. And I think the following week they beat Spurs, and it was just, so he's learned, it's not intransigence, it's just finding that style, and if it suits you, if you can play it, keep doing it and get better at it. I don't really have any problem with it at all. And I think it's actually what we need. Do you have anything else to say about this? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's a summertime. Look at that. It's going to be a 2-hour pod. Let's do this properly. I'll see you off with a 2-hour pod. Don't worry, I'll not be back for. I'll probably do 10 minutes after the Bruges game, and then I'll be away for another 2 or 3 weeks. So you get plenty of time to pick through this, and I'm sorry if it's totally out of sync. But like I'm saying, the summertime has been, the football has kept on. The big news with Rangers, probably the biggest news we've had in 2 or 3 years. 75 million we were looking for back in 2012 to stop us going into administration or going into bankruptcy. And 75 million is probably what these guys have paid to buy the club. It feels like a total bookending. And it's stuff, it's taking your attention, but you still try to do the summertime thing as well, even though there's lots of football still on the telly. And for me, as I've said before, it's watching all the best pictures movies of Oscars, the films that have won the best picture Oscar. Now, I think there's been about 96, 97 Oscars ceremonies, and I think I've got about 30 odd that I've still to see. About a third of all films that have won, and most of them are the ones before, like the Second World War and into the 50s and that. But I've seen a few of them as well. So I'm just trying to tick off ones. It's an excuse to watch movies. Like Gandhi is on Prime just now. It's part of your Prime package now. So that's an Oscar-winning film that I've never watched. Ben Kingsley, see when he's playing Don Logan in Sexy Beast, and the first time you see him, he's sitting in his room in his pants, big white pants. Is that supposed to be a kind of a tribute to the guy? We nod to the fact he played Gandhi. I don't know, but the other day I saw Cries and Whispers, which didn't win the Oscar. It didn't win a Best Picture Oscar. It was on Sky Cinema. And it's Ingmar Bergman, and I had never heard this film. I had heard of it, but I'd never watched it before. I don't know why. I mean, I watched Seventh Seal, Ingmar Bergman's most famous film. Fanny and Alexander's a great film. I've watched that a couple of times. I love Fanny and Alexander. That's phenomenal. But I think that's all the Ingmar Bergman I've watched. I'm not a total cinephile or anything like that. But the thing about Cries and Whispers was it got beat to the Oscar by The Sting, which is Robert Redford, Paul Newman, the Steiners, ragtime music and stuff like that. Scott Joplin. I watched that recently. It was one of the Oscar-winning best movies that I hadn't seen the whole way through. So I watched it on Sky Movie recently, and it was passive. It was terrible. I really didn't enjoy it at all. I thought it was a lot of nonsense. They're very good-looking guys, you know what I mean, production values, etc. But it was obviously all soundstage stuff, and it's pretty minced. I thought that's won the Oscar. And I read a review of it I've got a book of film reviews by a really respected David Thompson, and he was saying how in that talking about, he says, you can't believe this is the film that beat Cries and Whispers to the Oscar in 1974. Or it's 1973 Oscars, but the ceremony is in 74. And I'm like, what? Cries and Whispers? So that was on Sky Cinema as well, so I watched that. And, Jesus Christ, wow. Watch it. I think it's still on Sky. Watch it. It's one of the most amazing films I've ever seen. This is unbelievable. But what's more unbelievable is the fact I'd never really taken notice of it before. And I started reading reviews about that and watching, and it was the favourite film of so many people, so many film critics. It's their favourite film of all time. And I love, obviously, I love Heat, Michael Mann's Heat, 1995. It wasn't nominated for a single Oscar. And talk about Chekhov's gun. You got this whole thing, Chekhov's gun. In cinema, it's like theatre, Anton Chekhov, the playwright, if his gun appears, if a gun appears on stage or in the cinema, on film, on screen, in a scene, it's going to have to get used. Somebody's going to have to fight. And with Neil and I, never point guns at people. They've got the old shotgun in the cottage next to the farmhouse, and it turns out later on, it does go off. But never mind Chekhov's gun. And it's a very Chekhovian film. In Cries and Whispers, it's three sisters in it. That kind of same period as well. But Chekhov's gun has got nothing on Bergman's extra helping of fish pie. If somebody asks for an extra helping of fish pie in an Ingmar Bergman film, just make sure you're ready. Make sure you're ready for what's about to unfold. I mean, she's the wine glass gets spilled and smashes and all that, and the bit of glass off the wine glass is the methodology, but the forewarning, the foreshadowing is the extra. You want extra fish pie, mate? I'll give you extra fish pie. It's quite a thing. Quite stunning. With Neil and I, they shoot because with Neil's going to understudy Constantine in the Seagull. That's Chekhov. So they use Chekhov's gun. It's actually Chekhov's gun they're using in with Neil and I. And then he actually shoots fish. They use it in the burn as well when they're running out of food, and instead they're rubbish at fishing. So with Neil's trying to shoot the fish, like Bergman. Oh, that's deep, Alec. But I think it proves this whole point of like what the people actually like, the difference between sport and the arts. The arts can come down to personal taste. You know, I still paying attention to who wins the best Oscar, the best movie at the Oscars, because you want to know what the taste was at that time, what people thought was the best movie, and that's maybe a bit like when Celtic won the league for us. You know, we're like, oh, fuck, it was crap that year. You know, Celtic won the league, but that team did win the league, and you've got to acknowledge they were the best in the league at that point in time. Um, you can't really argue with sport now. That's why, you know, you get people saying, "Oh, you cheated," and it's immoral the way you've won it. And we're getting that coming back. Actually, I like that. It'll soon be, you know, we're back to being corporate Rangers again, which is fantastic. But I think of the films that I've seen that won the Best Picture, that I saw them when they came out at the cinema. For example, what was it, 1995, when Heat should have been getting nominated. It was Braveheart won Best Picture. Apollo 13 was a nominated. Babe, the one with the pig, the Wayne's film with the pig, that was nominated. Il Postino, fair enough, that was nominated. Sense and Sensibility, which is probably my next favourite film in the world. I love Ang Lee's Sense and Sensibility. They were all nominated. That was the shortlist for the Best Picture in 1995. Apart from Apollo 13, which I saw in video pretty soon after, I saw all of them at the pictures. Every nomination that year, I just happened to be, and that's like the years, you know, like all the best pictures I've seen, you know, I don't know, what's like Shakespeare in Love and Chicago and stuff like that. That's me going to watch the times I went to watch Jock Wallace's Rangers. The time I went, and it was once the first time when they actually won the league. Dick Advocaat's Rangers. Alec McLeish, Walter Smith's Rangers when they were winning stuff. I was there. You know, it's like going to the cinema, going to see that stuff. Now, the ones that I've yet to see, like Gandhi, Slumdog Millionaire, Driving Miss Daisy, they took. I could have gone to the pictures to see them, but that's the years of my life I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough money. I was going to uni or something like that, and I couldn't go and watch Rangers. I'm still obsessed with the results. I'm still, you know, I'm running about listening to it in the radio and stuff like that. I just need to know how Rangers have got on, but I'm not there. I'm not in the stadium. I'm not watching it live on telly. I can't even afford to go to the pub to watch it live on the telly. But I'm not really properly enjoying it, but I'm taking it on board. It happened in my lifetime. It happened when I was able to go to the cinema or whatever, able to go to the football. But then you've got like the management of Bill Struth, Scott Simon, Willie Waddle, the stuff that makes Rangers Rangers, that makes them the team that I inherited, that I started supporting in the kind of last 50 years of their existence. I didn't experience any. I wasn't born for most of that. But I'm watching like Patty newsreels, I'm watching old videos, I'm reading books, and that to try and get a feeling. The same way I've watched Casablanca, I've watched Gone with the Wind, I've watched these, you know, All Quiet in the Western Front. I've watched all these old How Green Was My Valley. I've watched all these old films on the waterfront. The Oscar-winning best movies that were filmed before I was born, that were at the cinema before I was born, just to get an idea of the history. So I'm still involved. I still want to know about it. And you build up this kind of acknowledgement of the difference. In 1974, for example, the difference between sport and difference between art. But in 1974, you get Godfather 2 wins the Oscar. The Oscars take place early 75, but it's the films that come out in 1974. Godfather 2 wins the Oscar, which is one of my favourite films of all time. And Chinatown and The Conversation are both not. I think Towering Inferno and Lenny are the other nominations. But The Conversation, also Francis Ford Coppola, and Gene Hackman and John Cazale's got a part in that as well, as well as Godfather 2. And Chinatown, one of the greatest movies, arguably many people's choice is one of the greatest movies of all time, as their favourite movie of all time, and it's perfect. It is, and Fish features quite heavily in that film as well. It's a phenomenal film, different class, but the following 1975, it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, so Jack Nicholson's the stars in that as well. It does win the Oscar, and I think Dog Day Afternoons, you get John Cazale and Al Pacino again, is nominated. There's something else. It's an amazing time for cinema, but 1974, I find it quite amazing that a lot of people are like devastated to think Chinatown should have beaten Godfather 2 or The Conversation should have beaten the two of them. And you've got the 1974 World Cup, which is remembered as the Dutch, who didn't win the thing. The Netherlands, Johan Cruyff's Netherlands, didn't win that World Cup, and it's a disgrace because they were the best team there. And I think that Well, it started. I don't remember the '74 World Cup. At '78 is the first one I remember, and that was about Scotland being a complete disaster, and then me being open mouthed at the Argentina fans watching them. I was only 8 years old at the time, but it was very, very emotional. I remember it. I remember thinking Scotland were going to win the World Cup, and so did a lot of adults round about me. It was never going to happen. But in '74, the seeds of what I learned in 1982 were there. The Dutch possession football, the total football of the Rinus Michels, Johan Cruyff's Dutch national team. It was beautiful football to watch. A lot of amazing players. And the Dutch in '74, Bayern Munich, 2 months earlier, had won the European Cup, the first time Germany had ever been champions of Europe in the club scene. And it was the end of a run of 5 straight finals, but 4 straight wins in the European Cup between Feyenoord and Ajax of the European Cup club football. And most of the players, not all of them, the Germans involved, Barry Holshoff, but it was mostly that the players were all from the country that their club was based in. So the Dutch arrived, they were big news, and the players they had were fantastic, and they had this new style, this Rinus Michels total football. And they were everybody's favourite. Every neutral's kind of darling. The type of football they were playing. The Brazil '70 team, well, they'd kind of gone downhill a bit. Were a bit cynical. They couldn't beat Scotland in that World Cup finals, but everybody's kind of held on to this thing for years. That the Dutch are. I started believing in it. There's a book, Brilliant Orange, as well. You got the idea that the Dutch lost that World Cup final because they played expansive football, because they played open football, and the Germans were cynical and were hard bitten, and they were just the evil Germany. The Second World War plays a massive part in the psychology of these things. But you had this scenario, and you want to throw Poland in there. Gregor Lato's Poland. Really entertaining. Lato's the top scorer in that World Cup finals. So it's a bit like The Conversation, Godfather, Chinatown. Any one of these films could have been the best movie, but it's sport, and sport doesn't do votes. Sport does a result. You play to find out who the winners are. You don't vote. And I feel that what actually happened with the Dutch national team in '74 was they scored without a German touching the ball in the final, as we all know. And the Dutch hate the Germans because of the Second World War, obviously, and they couldn't wait to humiliate the Germans. So they've gone a goal up without a German touching the ball. It kind of played into the fact that the belief they had that they were going to utterly destroy the Germans. And the Germans have always been accused of arrogance. It's a favourite trope, especially of London-based media when I was growing up, about the German football team, the West German national team. But the most arrogant football nation in the world is the Dutch. They just thought they were absolutely amazing, and they were going to do the business. And they're also the most violent as well. Them in Portugal, it's quite mental. But whereas they're seen as a very progressive nation, and they are. I think they just get it out of their system. The same as the rest of us are coming round to right-wing stuff these days. Is very sad, but that's just social media for you. Anyway, the whole point is the Dutch, they actually lost that final because they just got too cocky. They started trying to showboat a minute into the game, and the Germans had to rebuild their nation twice in the 20th century. Somebody taking the piss doesn't bother them. They're used to being flattened and having their country taken off them, and having people, the Russians and what have you, and rolling about their country and committing all sorts of atrocities. And that they committed themselves. It wasn't in their psyche, the Germans, to be bothered by somebody trying to showboat at football. They're thinking, we're only getting beat 1-0, and by the end of that half, they've scored 2 goals. That shatters the Dutch, who've got too showboaty too quick, and they kind of get their rhythm back, and Germany win the game. But for ages, this thing of they were the better football team used to bother me. And what happened in 1982, I'm 12, 13 years old, 1982 World Cup. Of course, Scotland would take the lead against Brazil and all that. And the early part of that tournament, Scotland we were in the group with New Zealand, the Soviet Union, and Brazil. And Brazil were an amazing team. And this was an amazing Brazil team, Zico, Falcao, Scherezzo, Junior, Eder, Socrates. These guys were flipping unbelievable, sexy bastards as well. That was my. You always hear people talking about the first time they saw such and such on Top of the Pops. Ostensibly heterosexual men talking about when they were kids seeing like Led Zeppelin or the New York Dolls or something, Roxy Music. Oh, that was the night. I thought, I love that. I want it because it's you kind of fancy them at some level, but you want to be them. That's an idea of masculinity that you find really exciting because you want to be like that. That's what I felt. With me, it was Brazil '82, and it was a lot of guys in my generation. I was just turning 13 at the time, and I'd never seen anything like this because the same thing. You didn't have the deregulation of football these days, and foreign players were very much foreign players. Deregulation of broadcasting, so you didn't see these players playing. This was the first time you were seeing them. Everybody's kits were genuinely different. The styles of football were genuinely different. I had never seen a proper Brazil team. The Brazil '78 team scored some amazing goals, but they never really caught my imagination. '82, what a team! You'll know all about them. There's been books written about it, and so we wanted Brazil to beat everybody, assuming they were going to beat us, and their thing was to beat New Zealand and then beat the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union scored first. The first round of group games, they scored first against Brazil. The Brazil goalkeeper, as usual, throws the ball into the back of the net, and it's at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan Stadium in Seville, where the same end the penalties were taken at in the 2022 Europa League final. But Brazil I'm having to support Brazil. It's not just a case of I'm loving their football. We need Brazil to win. Scotland fans need Brazil to win. And it's getting to like 20 minutes to go, and it's still 1-0 to the Soviets. This is the disaster for us. It means we're going to have to beat Brazil to get out of the group. And then Brazil score these 2 goals to win the game 2-1. So you had the excuse that that was good because you wanted them to win. But the way they scored the goals, just again, look that up. If you've never seen it, everybody's seen it. Socrates and then Eder, just 2 of the most unbelievably stylish, sublime goals I'd ever seen. I instantly fell in love with them. When we took the lead against them later on, Dave Neri scores first, the toe poke, etc. It's phenomenal. We've scored against Brazil. I'm going nuts because I'm only 13. I don't know the way Graham Souness knows. You've just annoyed them. And Brazil scored 4 times against us, and the goals are sublime again. And in the group stage, they beat Argentina as well. And by this point, Scotland are out, and this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm going to watch Brazil winning this World Cup. And then they have the game against Italy, of course, where Italy put them out. Italy, who'd scored like 2 goals, I think one against, was it even, they drew their way through the group. I think they drew 0-0 and 1 each. Maybe another 0-0 or maybe another 1 each, but they drew their way through their group. And they had beat Argentina, but not as well as Brazil had beaten them. So Italy needed to beat this Brazil team, and it was in Espanyol. So I'm telling you something you already know about, sorry. But Italy kept taking the lead. Brazil would equalise, and their football was beautiful with this poacher Paolo Rossi. And I hated it. And I'm at a stage in my life where I'm 13 years old, and I'd been at my first Rangers game back in '77. I'd watched us winning the treble, but really, as I'm getting older, as I'm actually getting to that age where you really, really properly care. Rangers on the middle of not winning the league for 9 years and finishing like 4th and 5th in the league, doing bugger all in Europe. Well, we did all right, 1978, 79, quarter-final European Cup. But by that point, that's a distant memory because you're like, at that young age, a couple of years is a hell of a long time. Everything in my life was Scotland couldn't get out of group stage at a major tournament. Everything was crap, and I'd just fallen in love with this Brazil team. I'd already had an admiration for the Germans. I remember watching Euro 1980 and wanting the Germans to win. But this was the way I wanted to see football played. It was amazing. And Italy went out there and just crappy, drawing their first 3 group games. Italy went out there and put this Brazil team out with their shitty wee poacher goals. And I was gutted, devastated. For my birthday, which happened a few weeks later, I got Subbuteo set with Brazil and Italy. And I would make Brazil beat Italy every 2 minutes. On the Subbuteo, I'd play myself because I'm no pals, no. But I would just, Brazil would always win. The players' names and stuff like that. I was just devastated by it. And I had to make a conscious decision then. I think I just learned, I grew up big style. It was like, I'm either going to have to abandon football altogether because it keeps doing this to me, or try and appreciate what Italy did. Of course, Germany in the semi-final against the French, I'm pretty soon back on board, and everybody wanted that French team to win the World Cup once Brazil were out because they were a beautiful team as well. But the Germans beat them and get to the final. Then in '86, the Germans beat them and get to the final. Lose the final, but win the World Cup in 1990. And I just learned, and I think so much slagging for Germany as being lucky by the English, by English-based commentators every time they would beat England in a major tournament, that I realised, no, this is the way to do it. you got to be cynical, you got to be organised, you got to let these flair teams get all excited and get all worked up. And it became this kind of anti-ideology that I had, that I thought the Germans had as well. It got to the point where don't be worried. If you can see that, that's the only tattoo I've got in my body. You'll be pleased to know, and it's the Deutscher Fußballbund. It's the crest, the German national team, the West German national team. It was when I was growing up, because I'm never going to insult members of my family or my wife or whatever by reducing what I feel about them to a tattoo in my spotty, crusty old body. Neither Rangers nor the Scotland national team either. I care too much about that kind of stuff. I don't have to get a tattoo about that, but people would get tattoos of their, their kind of their ethos, what their mantra. It would be Sanskrit, or it would be the Maori tattoos or something like that people from Ardrossan and Saltcoats, the same as myself, we would get all this stuff, and I thought, what is it? I wanted to get a tattoo for various reasons, just to prove that I wasn't a complete square or whatever. But I thought, what would I get? What's my ethos? What's the closest I've got to a kind of a belief that it's kind of sellable as a in the dressing room or whatever? And I thought, it's a German national team, so I'll get that. And it was cemented in the fact that I'd heard so much crap talked about the Dutch and how it was the best kind of football, and there was different types of football. For me, and it would usually hated defensive football. And if you'd ever watched an Italian national team or Rangers doing really well in Europe and stuff like that, defending is an art form. It's 1/3 of football, if you like, defending midfield attack, and it's beautiful and it should be appreciated. Dirty football, that's fine. I didn't believe in idealistic football, and I certainly didn't believe in ideologues. And I all get knocked out, as I say, in the World Cup in '78 and especially '82, and listen to people growing about the Dutch national side. But I think Russell Martin is Bergman's kind of cries and whispers. He's maybe not picked up the top prizes, but like his cinematographer winning the Oscar, he did. Bergman cinematographer won the Oscar for best cinematography for Cries and Whispers. He's helping so many young players, Russell Martin, have great careers, and he's winning enough prizes, and more importantly, just for a change, he's laying down some foundations which will reap so many prizes in the future. He's great with young players. Look, Johan Cruyff wasn't confined to what happened in 1974 in that final. The 1974 World Cup. He won his Ballons d'Or. He won European Cups. He won La Liga when him and Rinus Michels go to Barcelona from Ajax. Did all that as a player, but more so, Cruyff becomes Pep Guardiola. Really, Cruyff is Pep Guardiola. Cruyff was his mentor, was his confidant throughout his career. The Barcelona dream team, which Johan Cruyff managed, Pep Guardiola played for that team, and Johan Cruyff's coaching Barcelona while Pep's playing for them, and then Van Gaal is a coach at Barcelona. Frank Rijkaard before Pep Guardiola, he plays the total football version that Milan played under Arrigo Sacchi and latterly Fabio Capello, which utterly destroyed the Barcelona dream team of Cruyff in the 1994 European Cup final in the stadium in Athens that our game against Panathinaikos has just been moved to. In that Olympic stadium, that 4-0 defeat of the Cruyff dream team by Milan, playing a style of total football that Arrigo Sacchi had studied, but it was based on the team that Cruyff played in at national team, and the manager Cruyff played under, Rinus Michels, at Barcelona and Ajax and the Dutch national team in the 70s. Rijkaard and Rinus Michels were back at the Olympic Stadium where they lost the '74 World Cup final. The Dutch, or Rijkaard wasn't playing for the Dutch in 1974, but he's back there in 1988 as a player as the Dutch beat the Soviet Union in the final of the European Championships to win their only major international honour. They'd beaten the Germans in Hamburg in the semi-final. Pep Guardiola learned his lesson, that schooling they got from Fabio Capello's Milan in the 1994 Champions League final, and he thought, never again, that's not going to happen. So he comes back with tiki-taka, then he goes to Bayern Munich and he plays for Manchester. He goes to Manchester City and wins the Champions League with them, as well as 4 straight English League titles. It's a constant refreshing. It's making the gorgeous practical, and it's finding the practical in the gorgeous. It's not the same all the time, but it's possession football, and it's all based. It all starts with that Dutch national team of the 70s and with Rinus Michel's. Johan Cruyff won 3 European Cups as a player and 1 as a manager. Pep Guardiola won 3 Champions Leagues as a manager and 1 European Cup as it was as a player. Both of them gave tiki-taka and Xavi and Iniesta and Puyol and Busquets to the Spain national team, and Spain did win the World Cup. And now they've won more Euros than anybody else because they modernised. Spiritually, Johan Cruyff has won a World Cup. Germany were beaten in the semi-final by that Spain team in 2010. It was the Dutch, ironically, that were beaten in the final. And, South Africa with all its Dutch connections. But the Spanish, who were brutal, they were the most cynical team in Europe, basically, when I first started watching football in Scotland. Stuffed them 3-1 at Hand, and I've seen us beat them 2-0. With the last team to beat them in the European Championships. That whole run they had to win in Euro 2024, the only team to beat them in that whole run, including the qualifiers, was Scotland. And I was at that game. These things happen. You will get setbacks. But the Spanish changed. They went with this expansive football. They went with the model that had been laid down by Cruyff. Because it did win. It is now. I should be getting a Spain tattoo up there. I'm too old for any more tattoos. But I feel as if we need to not be scared of possession football. Not be scared of expansive football. Not be scared of what Russell Martin is trying to do. I think we have this idea. I had an idea, I know it's the Belgians rather than the Dutch, but there was like mussels. It was like mussels without the chips. There's a lot of stuff on your plate, and it all looks very nice and it tastes very nice. The mussel, but it's not substantial enough. It's not going to sustain you. But it's not the case now. There's a bit of kind of, I don't know. I'm talking about fish again. I don't really mean this, but Spanish like their fish as well. It's the way to go, and we've got to do this. Look, I'll see you folks, all being well, just after the game against Bruges. Other news, we've got Max Aaron's or Aaron in Principal Garvey, who used to work in the inner city, teacher Mr. Garvey, who used to work in the inner city. He's asking for Aaron on the register, and it's Aaron that's answering. I think we have to know here is he's the same birthday as our manager, as our new head coach, has Maximilian. And Maximilian the First, he was the last knight. Maximilian the First, the Holy Roman Emperor, who was never actually crowned Holy Roman Emperor, the first Renaissance prince. They thought was Maximilian the First. He was actually in charge when the Reformation took place. He was a Holy Roman Emperor then, was Maximilian the First. It's a good name, Max Aaron, but he's a Capricorn. Same birthday as our manager, and Capricorns are strong, disciplined, hard workers with great leadership skills. Tav's a Scorpio, so make of that what you will. But we seem to be interested in this fellow who our management team know very well from his time as a youth at Norwich. He's been on loan at Valencia from Bournemouth, and we're supposed to be trying to get him from Bournemouth. But like all the signings, like Philip Clement's interview in the BBC, like Stephen Naismith's interviews with Stevie Clifford's on the Four Lads Had a Dream podcast, stuff that I was wanting to talk about. Leeds and Crystal Palace, that's a bit of interest there. Guy having to sell all his shares in Crystal Palace to make sure there's no conflict with Leon, because Crystal Palace wouldn't be able to play in the Europa League next season because Leon are the same guys get an interest in them there. I'm thinking Rangers have played Leeds twice in Europe. That's quite ironic. And Leeds are probably heading for Europe next season, as will we, so we wouldn't want there to be any kind of, make sure we're in the Champions League. I don't think Leeds are going to get into the Champions League next season, but Parag Marath has assured us that there won't be any conflict there. Everything else just now in fact, Russell Martin's here as well. It's kind of, is it shoegaze or is it East End Barra Boy out on the Raz? I don't really know what's going on with that big floppy mane of his, but it's just one of the many changes that are happening just now, and I'm finding it quite overpowering, and I have an inability to stop talking because it's been a long, hard season. 2024-2025 has officially ended as far as the Fat Egg podcast is concerned. I think our years of worrying about the ownership of our club have also officially ended. I will see after the Bruges friendly what in the closed loop universe is this pod becoming. Russell Martin is tuned in. Clapperboard on Rangers 2025-2026. Action.